Okay, it is 6 o'clock, and I would like to call to order the September 25th, 2023 regular board meeting of the Woodford County Board of Education. We are here at the middle school in Versailles. Roll call, we have all members present in person.
I would like to first turn my microphone on, but I would like to ask everyone to join me in a moment of silence. We had a student have an unfortunate accident, very unfortunate accident, and did not survive. So I'd like to ask for a moment of silence for Mr. Tevin Lemke. Thank you. And Mr. Lemke was a student at Safe Harbor. So thank you guys for honoring him here.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We are going to be led by Mr. Connor Nichols, who is one of our middle school students. And the flag is right behind the TV.
Pledge to allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Connor.
Okay, moving on in our agenda, are there any proposed amendments to the agenda?
Yes, I have one.
Yes.
I'd like to request for the treasurer's report and the August financials be moved to the regular agenda, and I'd like to explain why.
Are you making a motion?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have a motion, a second, and then we'll have discussion.
Okay, perfect.
Second.
So there was a motion by Ms. McCowan, a second by Ms. Springate. Any discussion?
Yes, I would just like to say that as a board, our duties include management of the schools in our district, as well as control and management of all school funds. The financial status of our district is too important to place in the consent agenda and not allow for discussion. We just raised taxes last month, and I feel like we owe it to our community to have open discussion on how we are using their tax dollars. I've also reviewed the policy regarding the board meeting agenda, and the only reference to needing support of 3 or more board members is to have items added to the agenda of a regular meeting. And this wouldn't be adding an agenda item. This would just be moving an existing item from one location to another. The same policy states that the agenda shall reflect a regular schedule of reports to the board on the status of district finances. There is no mention of needing majority vote to move an item from the consent agenda to the regular agenda. And I think that as a matter of kind of respect for one another, it would be good to honor requests when we have those.
So as board chair, I set the agenda, so any proposed amendments to the agenda as it's been set needs to be set out in the proposed amendments to the agenda, which is voted on. And I think, again, just for my commentary on it, all information is published on time. Everyone in the community has access to it. You all have opportunity to ask questions and get your understanding of it ahead of time. And I think that's, to say that we're not providing information, I don't think is correct. And I think that's all I have to say.
I would just say, just as a feedback to that, the information that's provided to the public is a 74-page, 76-page MUNIS document. And unless you work in school finance, I doubt anybody from the public would be able to really analyze that. I have always appreciated when we've had Mr. Smith come and just give a summary of changes and updates from the previous month to this month. And I think that it's important to discuss it openly. Yes, we can ask our questions before the board meeting. We have, several business days to do that. But it's not the same when we each go individually to ask the CFO or Mr. Adkins our questions and then not discuss them together.
I think every document that we're provided is provided to the public, which would include anything other than the MUNIS documentation.
And then
there's not any other attachment but the MUNIS document.
And just to follow up and echo what you're saying, Ms. McCowan, I think that we have our funds in a large part due to our taxpayers, and being financially responsible and holding the board, the superintendent, our staff accountable is something that is meant to be done in an open meeting. There is no avenue for the 5 board members to make a vote outside of an open meeting. There is no avenue for the 5 board members to even hold a discussion outside of an open meeting. All of that should be done in full view of the public. Questions should be asked, discussion should be had, and I do believe that it's clear in statute that the monthly financials have to be on the agenda. I do not believe that any one person or one person with 2 board members can decide that there can be no discussion about the monthly financial report. I just think, ultimately the buck stops with the board, the superintendent, the CFO, the staff. The buck doesn't stop with them. It stops with the board. We are elected officials, and to say to our taxpayers, give us your money, we're not going to discuss it. We're not going to have a hearing about taxes. We're not going to talk about why we need that. We're not going to disclose how much extra we had in a surplus last year. We're not going to talk about how we're going to spend that. We're not going to do any kind of planning. We're not going to follow our own policies. And sometimes the numbers may say we've got a balance of $6 million. Sometimes it may say $10 million. All of those are reasons why it's very vitally important for the board to have oversight and for the board to provide that oversight. And the only way the board can do that is in an open meeting.
Any other comments?
Yeah, one of the reasons that I didn't support switching this last month is because we do offer transparency by making everything public. We have discussed it, but what I noticed in the first 8 months of being on the board is that it was the same couple numbers and topics being thrown out. Some allegations and some inferences, and it caused a lot of disruption every board meeting. And it wasn't that anything was being kept, it was that there were repetitive questions happening every time, repetitive answers being given, the same answers. And so it just kept causing a good amount of conflict. And when people reached out to me, our taxpayers and my constituents, they were really tired of it. They were tired of the same thing happening over and over again. And so when this was moved to the consent agenda, I noticed that it was the meeting ran much smoother. We did not have the conflict during the meeting. That conflict also never came to any resolutions because it was the same thing being thrown out over and over, and the same answers through emails, through in-person answers. Just not getting the answer that you want doesn't mean it's not the answer. And so I'm not really in favor of continuing that same trend each month. If something were to change with the process there of how we're asking information, asking in advance. Yes, it's a very complicated Munis report, and it is very long. I know we get questions from the community. I think those questions can be forwarded at any time. I know I've emailed questions to get clarification on things. Those answers can also be shared publicly when we get them. So for me, it's more of we need to run a professional, productive meeting and not have the same argument over and over that doesn't really go anywhere. That's all I have to say on that.
Ms. Glass? Okay. We'll go ahead and vote. All in favor to remove the treasurer's report from the consent agenda to the regular agenda?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
The motion fails 3-2. Are there any other proposed amendments to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move on to our superintendent's report. And I think our first thing on that is our middle school performance. See Mr. Marcy, so we're in for a treat as usual.
Thank you. The students before you are, the students before you are members of our 8th grade orchestra. Cello on your right, we have Adam Roof, Leah Gensel, Kyle Vance, Connor Nichols, Ashlyn Derringer, Avery Garfey, and Sophia Reed. There's actually about 3 more students that usually join us. We have a small class. It was our first year after COVID. But these students have persevered and really played really well. I want to read you a little bit about the piece we're going to play. It's called Aspen Glow. Its main design was to evoke images of Colorado's high country and radiant fall colors of Aspen. It's a grade 2 piece it features beautiful melodic lines and a relaxing tempo, some pizzicato plucking and such. But this piece is special to me because I always think of one of the most beautiful scenes during the fall. You would think it's outdoors and trees and everything else. But after the time changes on November 5th, if you go in the choir room at about 5 o'clock in the evening, the sunlight comes through the window and it just lights it up this beautiful golden color. And that's what I always think of when I think of fall, is the choir room and how beautiful it is. So if you're ever here after time change in early November, do yourself a favor and go and check that out. It's a beautiful spectacle. So we're going to play this for you. Please enjoy.
Thank you.
Very good, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marcy. Thank you to the orchestra. Well done, as usual. Okay, moving on in our agenda, our high school update. We have Mr. Ratliff here.
He is.
Oh, is he here? Yep. We have a couple of change orders to approve tonight.
The screen is far away. We've had another another good month of progress. The weather's been great. The last 2 months have been great. Only bad news about it is the days are getting shorter and cold weather's coming, so we're trying to take advantage of the good weather while we have it in the long days. There has been some changes. We go ahead and assume in these that it'll be approved. If not, we can always revise it and resend, but the new numbers will include this updated or this forthcoming change order 7 that I'll be presenting after the update. Total project cost $73,066,931.50. Total construction cost to date is $60,955,001.56. And the total construction cost paid to date is $22,031,709.18. This is 36%. One thing I haven't mentioned, keep in mind on that 36%, that doesn't include retainage, which is usually, it ranges, but 5 to 10%. Right now it's at 10% on contracts. So that does keep that number lower than it currently is, but that reflects what you've actually paid to date. The original substantial completion was October 1st, 2024. This changed with this forthcoming change order, but if approved, the revised substantial completion date will be November 12th, 2024. This is your updated contingency log, and I definitely can't read that from here, but change order 7 is included. It's actually it's a savings, it's a deduct, it's not an add. I'm sure that's good news to hear. It's a savings of $13,020.68 back to you, and I believe your current contingency is at 76%, or is that what it says? Okay. There's the building sequence, same as always. There's a side-by-side comparing August to September. I think if you look closely, you can see some major differences. Just to point out a few, the E-wing that's shooting towards the apartments there and the Tyrone Pike connection now has, I think a month ago, it didn't even have this, it had CMU going up. It now has CMU completed, the joist, decking, and the entire roof installed. Area D is mostly under roof, and roofing is underway on that entire area, area F and D. And you'll see some major changes in the auditorium and gymnasium area. Oh gosh, I can't read any of that. So I'll do the best and just go off memory. Brick veneer, I believe that would be 60% completed. Area C, you'll see some photos of all these items. I need to get fancy to where I say them and the picture pops up, but I haven't got that far yet. This is the fanciest update I've ever done for a board, so we're improving. So what is the next one?
Started block filler.
Okay, yeah, maybe y'all can read it to me. Second floor slab is complete at area D. The joist and decking at area E is complete. The lightweight insulating concrete and PVC roof at area E is complete. The
Started insulation metal roof, area F.
Okay. Started lightweight insulating concrete at area F. Exterior spray foam at area E. That's the yellow. In case somebody don't know, when you see the yellow color on the building, that's spray foam. It will not be permanent. Brick will go over that. So metal panel and brick. Installed stairs at area E. Started stone veneer at area E. That's the few courses of stone you see going around the bottom of the building.
Continued
Completed CMU
yeah.
install at the gymnasium, or continued CMU. Started CMU install at the storm shelter. MEP rough-in is ongoing in areas C, E, F, and D. Started metal wall panels at area C around the ag shop. You'll see pictures of that. That started today. Storm pipe is at 40%. Site grading and excavation is 85%. This is when it really kind of gets slow because it's all fine tuning, fine grading from here on. I do anticipate them being near complete, except for asphalt and all the final products before winter. So there will be a lot of areas covered in stone that'll keep mud and stuff from getting all over the road. And then the greenhouse foundation and stem walls are 100% as of today, and that structural will be going up in the next couple of weeks. 30-day look ahead. We will complete the brick at Area C, continue brick at Area E, complete window installs at Area C. Those are set to start Monday. Start window frame install at Area E, start window frames at Area F, continue lightweight insulating concrete at Area F, start the PVC roof at Area F, complete metal roof at Area F. That started today. That's the big gabled area you see, the arch. That metal roof will be complete this month. Continue MEP rough in at Area C, E, F, and D. Complete CMU at the gymnasium, complete CMU at the cafeteria, start block filler at Area E. You'll see that the interior walls are white, a lot of them are white now. That's block filler that goes on before like the prime and paint. Continue joisting and decking at Area D. Start precast wall installation at the storm shelter, and continue site grading and storm drainage. So there's a view from the gymnasium side. We'll call that the east view. Those are some very large walls, and that's a very large room. So it's a lot of block going in there. It looks like it's going slow, but it's actually moving really quick. And you'll see the auditorium slabs poured there. You can see it sloping down to the stage now. So that's happened over the past month. There's a northeast view. That's looking at the back of the gymnasium. And there's your ag shop down there on C Wing. There's a northwest view. That's your two classroom wings, E and C. There's kind of an up close of the brick and the stone. Making a lot of progress there. I think it looks really good. It's a very unique look. I think it blends in well and looks great. There's a west view. They're coming on around with the spray foam. They'll start on Area F this week, I imagine. They should continue going. So going to be a lot of yellow for a while. Just an up close shot at, you can see the two classroom wings are completely covered in roof, and they're started. There's guys working on that Area F right now. There's a southwest view. There's the greenhouse structure, and as you can see, the metal wall panels have started on the ag shop, and those will continue over the next week or two. There's kind of an entire project aerial view. Here's some interior photos. The admin area, since you all took the tour last week, they've started framing. Oh, skipped one. So that second picture is the second floor Area D corridor, and kind of just to give you an indicator, that's headed towards the media center from like the admin area, above the admin area, and then you take a right, and that's where you go into C Wing second floor. The photo on the far left is your science classrooms. Those will be divided up. Right now it's currently one large room, but I think it's 3 in that space total. Middle picture is an electrical room, MDF room on the second floor. If anybody in here appreciates electrical work, that's some clean looking work right there, and that's a lot of pipe. So thought that was worth throwing in, and that's kind of to show you how much work is going on in there that's not seen. That's a ton of work right there in that small picture. So, and then you've got the C second floor. I mentioned the block filler. The walls are turning white, and that gives it a real feel to it when they start turning white, and you notice those changes. Got the E second floor. That probably within the next week or so, we'll start getting block filler, so it'll start changing quickly. You can see the roof leaders, those white pipe running from the decking. That's where all the water comes off your roof, run down them pipes and into the drainage underground. And then you've got your F Media Center, and they're working on roof leaders there, it appears too. So for this one, now that we're kind of into phase 2, doing the same thing, but it's much shorter. For phase 2, the total project cost is $4,504,760. Construction cost to date is $3,320,018. The total construction cost paid to date is $610,269.05. That's 18% of the contract that's been completed. And the original substantial completion date is 3/15, and it has not been revised at this point. There's a change order 1 for phase 2, and that didn't get updated, but this sounds steep, but it would be 60 days, and I'll explain why moving forward, but that would put it at a 5/15 substantial date, completion date. There is a contingency log. I definitely can't see that. It reflects this forthcoming change order 1 for it's PR1 change order 1 for phase 2. I'm not sure what it's roughly 80-something thousand total. I don't know where that leaves your contingency. 70-something, 80-something%.
87%.
Okay. Leaves 560.
96,000.
596, okay. So there's an update, not a lot different. The other photo, you could see the construction entrance is put in, the drainage is finished, and the curb has been set and idle, waiting on this change order 1 that's coming before you tonight. That will allow, no matter what happens, that will allow them to move forward. Basically, they were at a point to where nothing could be done until they know which direction you all would like to go. There's an updated schedule, as always, and the gray items to kind of start, especially on our master schedule where it's so large, the gray items just indicate that they're 100% complete. If they're white, that means they're not. I try to put just the big ticket items like the steel, the slab pours, the roof, the windows, the ceiling grid, the flooring, and kind of explain that if the ceiling grid becomes a problem, that means something above it has become a problem. So if any of those items, these are like the critical path items. We are still tracking, where is the final page? Roughly 2 weeks ahead. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. I've as Mr. Atkins and Shane, Mr. Smith, at the last progress meeting, the plumber, in my opinion, starting to fall behind in areas. We have had several meetings, and we put them on notice last week that we expect to see changes or we will take action. Starting today, they doubled their manpower, so we'll see what happens. But more bodies don't always mean more production, but hopefully they're good, skilled professionals, and they'll pick up the pace. And that's all I got.
I have a quick question. On the first slide, it looked like the substantial completion date was going to be in November of '24.
Yes.
And then on that one there, does that say the same thing, or does it say something different? The slide you just had
So
up, the last
that would
slide.
be phase 1 of November 2024. And then you want to see the second, phase 2?
Or just the final.
But that's just for the fields.
Oh, are you talking about the
Right,
schedule
here.
or
Just
this?
I just saw it revised final completion.
So substantial completion and final completion are different.
Okay.
So substantial completion means at that point that it is able to turn over to the owner, as far as that means all your inspections, you have the certificate of occupancy that everything is structurally sound, that it's operating the way they should. But Final completion is always 30 days after, and that means for any, I would call them minor deficiency, which means that's why you could technically have people in the building, but it's not final completion, means you've got 30 days to get any problems or issues resolved. So on a building this size, that's, how would you say, it's a lot of work still in 30 days, but it's like, it's minor work is the way it should be. So that's the way every project, every school project is, every contract, you always have 30 days from substantial to final completion.
I was just trying to get an idea of, when the students might be able to move in and we could start kind of using that building. So originally, the substantial completion date was, can you remind me?
October 1st, I believe.
It's out there, yep.
It's on that slide one.
Oh, is it at that?
October 1st, 24. And I don't have a breakdown of the days, but that, a lot of that was from those seams where they held up work, the extra days that took, and then anything else would be the rain. Anything that exceeds, like it's in the front end docks that we anticipate, let's say for the month of August, let's say we anticipate, like NOAA says there'll be 8. Anything over 8 is added to the contract. So if it's 12 rain days, they get 4. And that's the way the contracts are written up. So they're entitled to anything over the average weather days that we anticipate.
So it looks like as of right now, we're thinking mid-December to be
For
Final?
final completion, yes.
Gotcha. Okay, well, thank you.
But we
Yeah.
would be able to start moving in November 12th, right? We would start,
I would be very careful with that. And the only reason I say is because there's nothing that says what all will be left in those 30 days. Like, what you don't want to run into is you don't want to run into a punch list being formed and, so let's just say this is a brand new room and there's a few minor dents or cracks or whatever in the sheetrock. Well, if the owner's moving in furniture, then and they ding something, which you tell me a move in of this size where there's not going to be dings and rubs or whatever, then there becomes the battle of, well, who's responsible for it and who's got to fix it? And you just can't anticipate what the items are that's going to need repaired for those 30 days. So I've said this numerous times, I would be with a year left in this project, to start shooting for an early move-in, I would be careful, is just my recommendation. We will work with you all the best way possible if we can sequence it, if we can get in early to areas, but it's just any minor hiccup can change that moving forward, So I've always operated under the direction that it would be completed in December before Christmas and students would start in 2025. Again, I think it's a conversation worth having later in the year.
I don't think I ever said we'd start.
Okay. Yeah. So.
Well, thank you so much for the information and the handouts. And again, I think this just really highlights why we can get written materials, but having a discussion as a board really helps clarify and allows not only board members, but the public then to kind of understand exactly where we're at and exactly, what we're kind of thinking about or planning for. So I really, really do appreciate that you weren't on the consent agenda and we actually got to hear from you. Thank you.
Yeah. And I want to be very clear, is what I'm saying is at substantial completion, it does not mean that this building is 100% done, it's 100% clean. That means contractors are gone. There is still 30 days to tighten up any loose ends. So it doesn't mean that things can't be moved in or things can't start. It's just to have that exact plan defined today would be tough.
Can I ask a question about Phase 2?
Yeah.
The completion date for that one was 3/15 of '24, so it's going to be ready 6 months, 8 months before
Yeah.
The actual, okay.
But I want to add to that a little bit with the change
Sure.
order that's coming.
I just
But
wanted
yes,
to make
as
sure
of-
that was right. I
yeah.
didn't know if it would be done before the phase one or if it would be done a little
Yeah.
bit after. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And then just to follow up on what you just said, with the change order, if that's approved, that's going to move that from March to May.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the update? Okay, then can I have a motion to approve change order number 7 for the Woodford County High School Phase 1 project?
So moved.
It's a motion by Ms. Glass and a second by Mr. Brickler. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Can I have a motion to approve change order number 1 for Woodford County High School Phase 2 project?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Brickler,
I'll second.
a second by Ms. Glass. Any questions or discussion on this item?
I did just want to clarify. I know that, that some of these changes were due to a coach, a staff member, having a meeting. I think Ms. McCowan, Mr. Atkins, I'm not sure who all was at that meeting, some number of months ago. Does this change order reflect all of the requests that were made by the coach and the teacher, or are there some things that are still missing?
Well, now, and maybe somebody else wants to speak, but I think it was all requests that were considered. I'm not sure, I don't have his list of, there was a lot of requests or wants. This was everything to do with like safety. I don't, if you want to,
this was-
safety was the big concern of these items for the, according to Mr. Swingle. I'm not a track and field person, so that was the big items that were addressed, according to him, was a safety concern.
And if I remember, a lot of it went from moving it from an infield
Yes.
area to outside of the track, right? Which makes a lot of sense. I'll just add that.
Yeah, all the requests that Mr. Swingle made the day that we had the meeting at the job trailer were taken into consideration by the architect. Sent on a list, if I remember correctly, we even sent the email back to Ms. McCown and Mr. Swingle, I believe, with the proposed changes to make sure that we had captured everything in that, if I'm not mistaken, and that I think everyone agreed that that was acceptable, that all the changes and those should be reflected in this change order.
So there hasn't been any further communication with Coach Swingle or Coach Johnson about, here's what we've come up with, you know, that kind of thing?
Well, in the email that I'm referencing, the proposed changes that he asked for was submitted in like a brief, there may have even been a little schematic drawing, if I'm not mistaken, that was sent back. We just wanted to make sure that we captured what he had requested, and that's been several months ago. I think we had that meeting in January, February, and I've not looked at it probably since February when we got the drawing and the listing back. And there may not be a drawing. I may be dreaming of that. I've looked at so many drawings lately. But I know that we did get the listing of the changes back, the proposed changes, and provided those to Mr. Swingle and got his blessing, so to speak, that we captured everything that he had requested.
Thank you.
Is it possible, Mr. Ratliff, just to go through the change order for phase 2?
Yeah, and you have, I do not have, well, yeah, I do. And we're all printed off. So it really helps, I can read them off, but without like a drawing, the two drawings side by side, like actually knowing what, because these are brief summaries, you know?
Right.
In the grand scheme, and I might need some help with this, but I believe there's the discus throwing. The throwing events were inside the end zone of the track, and they were moved outside of the end zone, outside of the track entirely. That required quite a bit of grade work and feel for that area because it's a lot lower than the track. So that was the substantial part of the work. It added turf for that end zone that wasn't there. So it wasn't just like an even trade, you know, you're keeping what you had, but then you're adding turf in that area. So that would be like the general summarization, but we can go through it. So the first line item, that would be kind of what I said, that there should be another drawing that shows kind of, that's showing the new field. Go down. So this kind of shows you where it lands now. So line item one would have been the grading, the feel and the site work that it takes in order to place those out there in that area. Line item 2, site development layout plan, basically telling you to install the throws, concrete pads, and athletic equipment in that area. Line item 3 is the site grading and drainage plan, which it did modify the drainage. They had to add drainage in that area because there was nothing there before, just existing conditions and grass. Site grading plan. Again, it's just modifying the grading in the D zone now that it's turf, serving a different purpose. It modified the grading in that area. So the easiest way to put it is those areas, you know, those events are now outside of the track in that area, extended that road up there to it instead of inside the field.
Thank you.
Yep.
I want to commend Mr. Swingle for bringing that to the attention, because as someone who did track and field and attempted to throw discus, those things can go crazy. And if you're trying to throw it inside of a field and it goes wonky, it can hurt somebody. So having it outside of the field is a big improvement and a necessity. So I'm glad he and the team that got together, and Ms. McCowan and everybody that got together and talked about that, pushed that through. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Rattler.
You all.
All right, so moving on, we have our recognitions for the month. This month, we have Family Resource Center partners and contributors, and we have Ms. Deanne Watts, who is our FRC coordinator, who is going to present those today. Welcome.
Thank you for this opportunity, Board of Education. I'd like to just start by saying, once again, this year we recognize the reality of food insecurity experienced by students and families in our community. Our Woodford County government has declared September Hunger Awareness Month. The Woodford County Family Resource Youth Service Centers are granted the opportunity to address food insecurity by collaborating with a team of dedicated church and community members and the Buford Landmark Masonic Lodge to fund the Backpack Buddies program. To date, the Woodford County Masons have donated over $120,000 through their annual charity golf tournament, which subsidizes this program. Our local churches and individual supporters purchase, pack, and deliver more than 450 food bags to our 7 schools on a weekly basis. For those 450 plus students, those weekend food items provide nourishment and assurance. On behalf of our students and families served by this program, thank you for your financial commitment and dedicated work. So at this time, I would like to read the names of the members who support our Backpack Buddies program. I will say that if every member on this team were here, we would certainly fill the room, but we know that these church and community members are the work behind the scenes and the busy bees. So there are several that are not present tonight, but I feel deserve their names to be read. And Ms. McHale, if you would like to give certificates to those who are here, we'll ask that our program partners come and stand up and receive their certificate. Evan Rowe, pastor of Midway Baptist Church. Ireland Craig, member of Midway Baptist. Mary Weiss, pastor of Midway Presbyterian. John Davis, member of Midway Presbyterian, Sally Kennard, member of Midway Presbyterian, Heather McCall, pastor of Midway Christian, John Thompson, member of First Christian, Deidre Van Hoos, member of First Christian, Eric Rice, minister of Connections and Outreach, Journey Church, Susan Craig, member of Versailles Methodist, Tyra Evans, member of Versailles Methodist, Leah McFarland, member of Versailles Methodist, Terry Least, member of Versailles Methodist, Darlene Dreyer, member of Versailles Methodist, Faye Blair, member of Versailles Methodist, Grace Florence, member of Versailles Methodist, Jackie Atkins, member of Versailles Methodist, Martha Thompson, member of Versailles Methodist, Susan Wade, member of Versailles Methodist, Nancy Duncan, member of Versailles Methodist, Linda Cook, member of Versailles Methodist, Pam Settles, member of Versailles Presbyterian, Donna Kelly, member of Versailles Presbyterian, Tammy Heston, member of Versailles Church of Christ, Janet Devers, member of Versailles Church of Christ, Retta Kidder, member of Versailles Church of Christ, Rita May, member of Versailles Church of Christ, Derek Summerall, minister of Versailles Church of Christ, Hunter Wood, member of Harmony Missionary Baptist Church in the Buford Landmark Masonic Lodge. Thank you so much.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Come on, just a second. That'll let her feel a little weird. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fox, and thank you. The Family Resource Center provides such a huge support for all of our kids throughout the district, and we obviously couldn't do it without the support of the community as well, so thank you to everyone for that support. Okay, we'll move on to our superintendent remarks.
Yeah, we had a great month here in Woodford County Schools. We had a walkthrough. Mr. Smith, Mr. Rayburn, several of us actually walked through the new school last week. It's amazing to see the work that's being done. It's a huge facility. It takes a good while to walk through, and really, we were looking at the plans, just a lot of good things going on. Very exciting to get to see that. Portrait of a Learner work continues as we see things going on in classrooms. Had a chance to visit several classrooms. One thing that sticks in my mind is at Huntertown. They had read the story of Jack Jewett, and they were taking a field trip the next day to the Jack Jewett house, and just seeing what being an empathetic communicator meant to that time in our area at that time. Just it goes a long way to see these skills at work in our classrooms. We also received some more recognition. I think I shared that with the board from the department about our Portrait of a Learner. So Ryan, Susan, your team, you guys have done a great job. Miss Elaine, done a great job. So thank you all for that. Again, just seeing the work going on in our classrooms, it's amazing to see how hard our staff work. Our students are really just involved, engaged, and that's what education's about. I loved that Mr. Hunley had made the comment in one of our podcasts that students remember experiences, and that's what we're trying to do in classrooms, more experiences. Just a little FYI about me, I wrap up the Citizens Police Academy tomorrow night, myself and Mr. Culbertson, so we had a chance to do that, and it's it's been a really good experience. I would recommend that to anybody if you get a chance to go be a part of that, because it's been really fun. Sure has. And just a plug for a shameless plug for our Kids Win podcast. They come out every 2 weeks. The first one was up at Northside. The second one was over at Simmons. We have our third one scheduled to be at Huntertown. We get a chance to interview kids, let them tell us about how the things are going on in their classes. We interview the principal typically, and just a really good thing. So anywhere you get your podcast, you can find the Kids Win podcast. So we'd love for you to join us on that. Listen to it in the car pickup line or drop-off line. Try to keep them about 15 minutes, so hopefully they're not too boring. But been a great month.
Thanks, Mr. Atkins.
Thank you.
Move on to our good news report. Mr. Brumley, I will start with you, but then I'm going to jump over to Mrs. Springate to give her an opportunity to go first. So go ahead, Mr. Brumley.
Thank you so much. I want to start off by saying a huge shout out to our arts education here in Woodford. We recently celebrated Arts Education Week, and we have one of the best, I would argue, arts education departments in the entire state, and they work really hard. And so a huge shout out to Mr. Marcy, Mr. Strickland, and all the rest of the music educators for the role they play in children's lives. They've been a part of mine for my entire 17 years, and I know they play a crucial role. So thank you, and thanks to the board for their continued support of the arts as well. The POW MIA ceremony we held on September 14th or 15th, I believe. And Woodford County Public Schools partnered with Woodford County to do a presentation of the White Table to celebrate the lives lost for POW and MIA Day. And we also had Jackson McNeese, a WCHS junior, Miss Rebecca Guzlin from Huntertown, and myself all had the opportunity to participate in the ceremony. It was a beautiful time. If you didn't catch it this year, highly recommend this next year. It's always a beautiful day of remembrance. And last but certainly not least, our sports. All of our teams are doing fantastic. WCHS volleyball 7-1 in last month, with the regular season now to 11-1, and their next home game is on September 28th against Madison Central at 7:30 p.m. Our girls soccer 4-3 in the last month, and our regular season now to 8-5 and 1 tied game. Next home game and senior night is September 15th against Estill County at 7:30. Be sure to show out for those seniors. It's a special year for them as well. And finally, our boys soccer 6-3 last month as well, bringing them to a regular season of 12-3 and 1 tied game. Their next home game and last game of the season is on September 28th against Frankfort, and that's at 7:30. And actually, finally, is our football team, who is 3-0 in the last month. They have been doing the Lord's work in the football game. We have had some really tough games, and they are pushing through. And they're not only being troopers on the field, but in the classrooms as well. So I applaud all of the football players for doing all that they do. And their next home game is this Friday against South Oldham, with a theme being Purple Out for Suicide Awareness Prevention Month. So be sure to show out to that as well. But that concludes my good news.
Thank you, Mr. Brumley. Ms. Springate?
Thank you. I would just say that we had the fifth graders, all of the fifth graders in Woodford County Public Schools out to the Jack Jewett House this month for Frontier Days. It's something that the Woodford County Heritage Committee has done for years and years and years. Used to be fourth grade, and then they confused us after COVID and moved the requirements up for fifth grade. So we did fifth grade for the past little bit, but it was so wonderful. The Woodford County Heritage Committee has a new executive director, fairly new, Sam Dunn, does a fantastic job. Wonderful support from the fiscal court and from, the magistrates, and from James Kay, judge executive. Really good board in place out there, and they just do fabulous work. So everybody go out and visit. We've got a new walking path back there too. So,
Mr. Brickler?
Yeah, so I wanted to highlight Simmons had a Run for DC fundraiser that they held recently. Really great turnout. They raised $13,048. And for those of you who don't know, all the fifth graders at Simmons get to go to Washington, D.C. And this fundraiser helps cover some of the cost to send them on. So they had 130 people that crossed the finish line, another 100 or so that volunteered and spectated, and the cost went from $613 per person down to $445. So that's a big deal for a lot of those kids and families that get to go. So just wanted to highlight that and give a shout out to Simmons and everybody else that participated. So great job, everybody.
Awesome, thank you. I'll go. I just wanted to wish all of our sports teams good luck at districts over the next couple of weeks, those that are going. I attended 2 senior nights over the last month, one for football, one for soccer. If anybody hasn't been to a football game, you need to attend and you need to stay for halftime and watch our band competition and the band show. It is pretty darn amazing, and I know they've been fairly successful as well in their competitions, so thank you to them and well done. Super fun to watch them perform at halftime. At senior night for soccer, we also had a very famous student sing our national anthem, Mr. Brumley. Did a great job. What a difficult song to sing without any accompaniment. You did a wonderful job. Congratulations on that. Also, we had NHS and Beta Club inductions this past Thursday, I think it was. And I was really happy to see, we do have a couple of sports that are competing on those evenings, so not all of our kids were able to attend, and it was very nice to see our coaches take on that responsibility to the field or the court that they're playing on. And we actually had certificate presentations, at least at soccer and volleyball, that I saw. I think those were the only 2 that were playing that night, but I think that's a wonderful tribute to our student athletes, and thank you to our coaches and to our club sponsors that make that happen for our kids no matter where they're at. Portrait of a Learner continues to get some really good press, so congratulations again, and thank you to our Deeper Learning Committee and everyone that has been pushing this out. It's getting a lot of state recognition, and I know it's going to be a really fabulous program for us. Other than that, I just want to wish everyone a happy and restful fall break coming up, and it'll be the push into the holidays for us, so thank you. Ms. Glass?
Well, since we're at the middle school, I wanted to give a shout out to Miss Preston and her staff. I was at the 8th grade football game last week and noticed several uproars of students, and I would turn around and look, and they would get super excited because they saw all their teachers there, namely Mr. Webb. He got a huge shout out, lots of excited kids. And I know that's hard you've worked all day, you have families, but they had a little tailgate, and I just know it meant a lot to those kids to see you guys there, so that was really cool to see.
Ms. McCowan?
I've just got a couple of things. The first one is that we're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, so I've been excited to see all of the neat things that our schools are doing to celebrate that. That's been pretty fun. And before I came to the meeting tonight, I was just listening to the news, and my ears perked up because there was mention of 2 Woodford County students who had done something really nice for a World War II veteran. It sounds like we had a couple of 17-year-old or a couple of juniors at the high school who were helping to clean up debris at the Huntertown Community Interpretive Park. And they were focused on an area where someone named Fred Jackson used to live. And while we're moving debris, they found a World War II dog tag engraved with his name. And so like I said, I barely heard it before I came here and just looked up the story, but I think it's awesome that, our kids were, number one, doing some service like that for our community, and then they found something that was so important to someone and meant so much to them that they were able to return it. So I don't see that they have the kids' names listed, but I got to find out who they are and send them a little note, because I think that's great. Yep, that's all I got.
Connor, get on that. Okay. That's wonderful. Okay, moving on, we have Mr. Smith is going to give us a presentation. I'm sorry, I'm taking Miss Bradley. Oh my gosh. Instructional equity report from Mr. Asher. Please come up, Mr. Asher.
I always get ready for my cue and then get shot down. What's that? Okay, okay. All right, good evening. Thanks for letting me report once again on this 31st day of the school year for students. I do have a presentation I'm going to go through. The first up, I made mention this last month about standards-based grading and us making this change in grades 3, 4, and 5. The reason it is on, I've put a request on, is to allow us to pilot it, even though our policy, grading policy, says that 4th and 5th grades will adhere to a basic traditional grading scale with percentages and letter grades, and I'm going to explain those differences today. Before we get into this, just again a little bit of background of how we arrived here. One of our big ticket training items I've mentioned was our PLC training we did back in June 1st and 2nd. We had a group called Solution Tree come back. We had them several years ago due to turnover and change in leadership and those sort of things. And this morphed from that, where PLC is very much what do we want students to learn, how are we going to assess that and to ensure that they've learned it, and then what do you do next steps after that. And it really, the emphasis of that training was each student by standard, by target. And so standards-based grading has been talked about for a while, particularly at the elementary level. When I was there as well, we had just never taken that leap. And the teachers in that training that day, each school had a team. The talk of that, well, now's the time to make this change. So I'm asking for just allow us to pilot it. I'm not comfortable with making a full policy change just yet because we don't know all the intricacies and what that language of a policy may look like. So I'm going to go through this today, and again, that's an agenda item to request the pilot for grades 4 and 5. So standards-based grading, as we go through here, what it is a student-centered approach that is focused on measuring students' mastery of specific standards, and hence there's the name why it's called standards-based grading, mastery of those standards, which are also then broken down into targets over the course of the school year. Let me say, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention this. You have two items. One is attached there. One is a one-pager that we call it that uses a lot of the same information and graphics that I'm going through here in the slide presentation. But these were put together mainly as parent communication tools, really all audiences, also with teachers and students as well. So that's what it is. There are several graphics here that I'll probably spend the most time on that really help explain it. And the next one is the process here. I won't read every one of these to you, but as you can see, you're learning a new skill, you're practicing, you're making mistakes, quizzes on that to assess your mastery of that. You analyze, you fix, you ask for help, and then as needed, repeat that process to ultimately get to that last circle there of demonstrating mastery, and that is a visual of the process. Here's a comparison. I'm on the traditional grading versus standards-based grading of the two. Let me also say this practice, standards-based grading, has been done at K, first, and second since I've been here. So it's not an entirely new concept at the elementary level, but we have done letter grades, the traditional grading in 3, 4, and 5 in my experience here in Woodford. So it would use a different scale. You now use the terms area of concern, progressing, meets or exceeds, and that grade, it will, percentages still, because the teachers are going to have to make judgments of where they're at, so they still will be keeping percentages. It just won't, more loosely, I guess I would say, they're more interested in students demonstrating that mastery on a variety of assignments and assessments. So it really, and I'm going to tie these next two images together. Here's what a sample of what it looked like. This isn't exactly what ours would, but you go from a math 95% A to that entire breakdown that really demonstrates all of those targets and standards and how the child has progressed. The numbers there, ours will look a little bit different. It'll have a key to go along with that, but shows the levels of mastery in those specific skills. We really like this. This was from a training that several of our lead teachers went to that are helping lead this effort to show you a real life example of what this would look like. Yeah, your car is a B+, it's looking all right, but then look at that breakdown over there. You probably need some brakes right now, but everything else is great and you're doing okay on your tires. So they like that visual and help explain that to parents. Why? I'll just go with that last part there. It's a more accurate picture of what a child knows and is able to do for all audience, whether it's the teacher, the student, or the parents. Back to those graphics we just looked at, it's a breakdown of just beyond just the name of the content area and gives you more of a specific look at each skill and standard. The categories, here they are that I've already mentioned, and there are descriptors on each one. One mindset that we'll have to get to is we want to get students to meet. We want them to meet that. If they are indeed exceeding that and working to deeper levels or advanced, then that's when they'll be towards exceed. So that's going to be a mind shift for a lot of our overachieving students who are used to getting straight A's perhaps. Maybe they'll be meets in one category and then exceeds in others. Maybe they'll be across the board, but it's just going to be a little bit of shift there for all and how that is categorized. And then, another graphic. It uses some different language, but kind of just another way to put it in real life terms of where we're trying to get kids. We're trying to get them to ride the bike, so to speak there. Number 3, the target. And that's where we want to get them to. If they go beyond that, certainly that's okay. And then as we talk about so much as far as interventions and supports, those are our students down there at the 1s and 2s that we need to provide those training wheels for to help them get to that meets grade level standards level. And then we just close here. Join us in the journey. As I mentioned, this is not a new concept. It's something we've talked about for quite some time. Feel we're ready to make the move at elementary level. Will this expand to other levels? Not sure. Not sure. It gets a little more complicated when you go up to secondary. You start dealing with GPAs and those sort of things. It has been tested in our area. I'm aware of a Fayette County High School that tried it, but it is more complicated. So I don't know if we'll get there, but we certainly think it's the right move at elementary level right now. So I'll stop there before going to the next subject to see if you have any questions on standards-based grading.
I've got a question.
Sure.
So how will we know if this is a pilot? How are we going to know that, yes, this is going great, this is what we're looking for, we're going to move on beyond the pilot phase? Like, what are we looking, what's the outcome?
Really relying on, I've got a leadership team working on this, and that's comprised of teacher representatives from each school, each of the 4 elementaries, along with administrators. That team met back in, it was July 24th. I remember right before administrative retreat. How are we going to do this? What's the plan for students? What's the plan for teachers? What's the plan for parents who outlined all this? And then I mentioned that several of them, there was a training done at CKEC that we sent those teacher leaders to. So they're really the ones that I'm relying upon to give us that both qualitative and quantitative feedback as we go through the year.
Yeah, I just think it's going to be really important that we do have some sort of measurement, some sort of way to collect some kind of data so that we can kind of, determine if it's successful, if it's not successful. It's something we want to, after the pilot's over, take more widespread.
Sure.
So I think that would be really, really important. And then I know we'll discuss the pilot program later, but I definitely think it's going to be vital to have some sort of data, some sort of measurements, some sort of indicators. So hopefully that'll be something you'll talk about later.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think it's a really creative idea to break everything down more specifically to, like you said, math, but then there's these 5 categories because somebody could be good 90% of the time, but there's that something that they need help on. And so I think it's really great that you guys are thinking deeper into what it means. And the number isn't the important part. It's the standards, the categories, like what do you need help with? How can we get you from here to here in different areas? So yeah, I think it's a great idea.
I agree. Thanks. Any others?
No, that was super helpful. It was very clear. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And again, thanks goes to that team who put together the majority of this. I had done some Google search of some other districts that have implemented this and said, I like this point, and then put it together in this format. So kudos to them. Moving on, we've talked about Portrait of a Learner. I just want to again emphasize our phase 1 of learn, launch, and look. Kind of those 3 L's is our tagline: learn the competencies and the characteristics of each one, launch the language in schools and classrooms, and then finally look through the Portrait of a Learner lens to find ways to incorporate these competencies. So at each admin, at each what we call coaches meetings, those are our deans and assistants, we're looking at each of these elements. One thing we've realized is don't try to jump too fast to get to the look. A lot of these things are going on. Let's take some time to make sure you learn this language as adults in our district. So we've got some ideas of just some word games, and just to make sure that we understand what goes into being a creative problem solver, an empathetic communicator, so on and so forth. Along these lines, oops, there we go. Someone, I can't remember who said it, but they said kudos to our deeper learning team, and there they are. And so they will continue, remember, off of the CKEC grant and all of the structures and professional development they have going. This team will certainly continue to do that. But then also what we're doing, I always use the term build capacity. That's certainly what we're trying to do. So in the meantime this year, we have, Ms. Tracy has used the word ARMS going on to support our Portrait of a Learner work. And here's several of them. We're just trying to expand our capacity in this. As you'll see, Next Gen, that's put on by UK Next Gen. There's a couple of collaboratives, cooperatives, trainings that are going on that we're doing with them. Something called MindSpark, we're doing our second round of that. Thinking Maps cohort, which is really teacher heavy there in terms of that's a deeper learning strategy, and then benefits-based accountability. You'll see Ms. Tracy and my name on there quite a bit because we are the deeper learning co-chairs, so we want to make sure we know, and we've talked about this. You may have to go to this session, I'll go to this one, but we just want to stay in the know to help guide that deeper learning team through this phase 1 and then on to, as we talked about, a 3 to 5 year plan moving forward. So we've used this slide for several groups just to help give clarity so that we can be competent in this phase 1 here. Any questions on that?
Yeah, kind of jumping off Ms. Springgate's point about the last topic.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you might have just mentioned it 3 to 5 years, but with the Portrait of a Learner being launched, this year, what's kind of the time frame that you're looking to assess how it's going? Like the elementary, the middle school, high school, like is it like you're going to be assessing it throughout the whole time, but do you have kind of time frames like in 2 years we think it'll be this, or in 5 years we think,
I honestly don't. That'll be part of the 3 to 5 year, where we want to be.
Mm-hmm.
There's support documents and processes that we're going to use that have a continuum of where you should be in X amount of years. Mm-hmm. I'm going to leave it to, and we purposely didn't get there yet. We had a deeper learning team meeting, several weeks ago. But felt like, okay, we need to get to some of these trainings and get some more information here before we make those decisions. But we certainly, and we have kept a timeline to this point. We just plan to extend that for 3 to 5 and mile markers of where we want to be. But we don't have those established yet. We just are.
Oh yeah, we just started it. Yeah.
Yep, phase 1 and get that rolled out and get the foundation built as best we can.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Rickler, we have seen, though, these things are already going on in the classroom, and it's just us using the correct terminology to identify them. Our students they're resilient learners every day. That's trial and error. When they have a partner, their shoulder partner, that is collaborative learning and communicating. So we have things going on every day that are part of this Portrait of a Learner, and it's much like you said, now we're going to have to figure out how to gauge that. Yeah.
And it has been interesting, even just on social media, when we see pictures of students during the day and different things that are happening in the schools. And always you can see somewhere in the classroom, you can see that logo, you can see that it's present there. And it's interesting to me anyway, when I read about some of that stuff, to try to figure out, okay, which competency is that falling into, and then sometimes we'll actually be able to see because they've said it. So
Right.
I think it's been so far a successful rollout, and I'm very interested to watch how it develops. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you for the segue. You talked about the social media part of it. Ms. Bailey has this going. This is a Google form that I think mostly admin, and I'm not quite sure who you all sent it to, but just a way for them to submit evidence or experiences that are going on. So Elaine knows and is aware and can go get pics of those and post those on social media just to understand, help folks understand this is what it looks like. It's what we're really trying to do all along. It's more than just that icon. It's more than just those words. We want to show you what it actually looks like day in and day out in our schools. I think that's okay. Yeah. Anything else on Portrait of a Learner at this point? And then finally, this is just a FYI, Impact Kentucky survey. That is a working conditions survey. This is the year for it. As I've highlighted there, and this is hard to read from up here. It's, what is it, November 1st through December 15th, and it says data in February, so you can expect that later in the year. So I'm working, you have to nominate, or actually they volunteer a site-based teacher rep to be the go-to, the contact at each building level. I will be providing the information to them leading up to that time frame, because we certainly want at least, I think it mentions there, at least 50% or more participation at each school in order to get that data back. So again, just an FYI, it's the year for it, and when it comes available later in or beginning of 25, I'll bring that to you all.
I just had a quick question about this. In the past, I don't know if I was on some sort of a committee, but we talked about the impact data quite a bit. And I wasn't sure if we gave employees time at work to be able to do the survey. I feel like it's going to be vitally important to get a high participation rate so that we can get accurate information about the climate, the culture, how folks in the buildings are feeling, especially since it's anonymous. So I was wondering, is there any plan to send out, just information to staff saying, hey, just FYI, this is coming up, and just really kind of highlight it on, staff meetings, social media, that sort of thing, and then also just to ensure somehow that staff have the ability to be able to participate and take this survey.
Yeah, so the representatives, the site-based, it's a teacher rep, so it's a staff member of that building. The service, Impact Kentucky, gives us scripts and communications is sent out, emails that they will then be responsible to send out. In my experience, it's been a couple different names, these type of surveys, always done at faculty meetings so that you could assure that everybody has access to it and completes it right there. Going years back, the principal would actually step out of the meeting, or they do at the end, and then the coordinator would send out the links, what have you, and they finish it right there. I don't recall, I think it's pretty extensive. I don't know how long it takes, so sometimes you run into that. I got to go to an appointment, this, that, and the other, may have to leave the meeting. But again, in my experience, it's typically been done at designated faculty meeting time, so you have the best opportunity for everyone to take it.
That sounds great. I just wanted to make sure that folks were being given time to do that, work time, not being asked to do it on their own or anything like that. Thank you.
Last little bit, I don't have slides to go with it, just our equity update. Had our first district level team meeting today, just before this. Ms. Glass is your board representative to that. I came in with some guidance for the team. We also had invited the school leads. I keep mentioning that. Build capacity, right? Several of them attended. So the school teams have met at least once. We're 31st day, so that's pretty good. But this was our first district one, and just really trying to, we revisited where we left off last year, where we want to go. I think we have 3 major action steps we want to take after today's meeting. District level team is going to drop down to every other month, and the reason for that is that we can dedicate more time and energy to the school level meetings, which we want those happening each and every month. We really feel like we are to the point where more action, more activity at the school, and more, I guess I could say, differentiated as far as where the different schools are, so that they're leading their own work, and then just, again, freeing up more time for district team members to support the schools in the steps that they're taking. So I thought it was a very productive, open, honest meeting, some great conversation. Sometimes those are difficult conversations, but just... And one other aspect that we talked about is just the element of training in diversity, equity, inclusion. You got to realize it's been several years and we've had a lot of turnover. So how are we going to catch up those new staff members. We do integrate it in our new teacher academy, but I think there's more that we can do, and we had brainstormed some ideas for that. Any thoughts or questions on that?
One question, I know Ms. Springate had mentioned this before, probably a few months ago from time to time, but will there be an opportunity for the board to hear about the activities and things that are going on in terms of equity work at our schools? Some more specific information.
Yeah, you can. What we've devised and the reason for that structure of the every other month, because we want schools to be able to give them a little more time and be able to report at each of those district meetings. Those are our checkpoints, and so I would be able to share those with you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank
All
you,
right,
Mr.
thank you very
Asher.
much.
Now it's Mr. Smith's turn. 403B presentation.
Good evening. Just to follow up on something I brought up back in, I believe, the April or May board meetings when we were talking about pay raises and benefits for staff. One of the things that I proposed is that we look at doing a 403B, and that's a little bit too specific. It's really any type of deferred comp or 403B matching. To look at how the district can match that for our employees, to be able to be a benefit to our employees. Teacher retirement and county retirement systems are still really, really good and an incentive for somebody to come work for the district or any school district. But we know they're not what they used to be, right? They keep making changes and the benefit isn't quite as good as it was a few years ago. So districts are always looking at ways to mitigate that and to help just provide a benefit and something that will impact retention. Sorry, I'll get it out in a moment. Impact retention with employees. So with that said, we got with our American Fidelity provider and had a couple of conversations. They ran some actuarial numbers, and so we wanted to show you kind of what it would look like if we did basically a 5% match. And so I'll get to that in just a minute. Got the PowerPoint. So can I control that here, Dr. Rayburn? No. Okay. All right. So the very first slide on the presentation shows that there are 615 eligible participants currently on staff with the district. And anyone that's full-time or part-time, that are contracted employees would be eligible for this benefit. We currently have 60 participants, which is approximately 10% of our staff pool, that contribute a total of $79,231. That was in last fiscal year. And I just put on there the average contribution. So if that illustrates anything, it illustrates that a lot of folks just aren't taking advantage of that benefit, and so we want to try to make that a little more attractive. So the plan proposal, if the board would like for us to move forward with American Fidelity, would be to offer a 5% match on contributions with a vesting schedule to be paid after the end of each fiscal year. And the reason we want to put the vesting schedule on there is that so that also helps with our retention. An employee would have to be employed with the district as of 6/30 of a given year to be eligible for the match. And we really wanted to put that vesting schedule on there so that it should impact our retention, at some point. It may not impact it immediately, but at some point we feel like that'll help with the retention. I spoke to Mr. Wells and Mr. Atkins, and we feel like that, this is something that the district can put in place now, and with a little advertisement and marketing over time, it can become a bigger and bigger benefit for the employees.
Mr. Smith, can I ask two quick questions before we get off this slide?
Yes.
On the 5% match, what does that actually mean? Is it a percent for percent? So if you go up to 5%, we'll give you 5%, or is it some other combination?
It would be a 5% of every dollar that's contributed. So for example, if I contributed $100, the district would match 5% of that, or $5. If I contributed 1,000, the district would match 500. So, and I'll get into that just in a little bit in the next couple of slides, but it's a percentage of the dollar contributed.
With no max?
There is a max.
Okay.
So there's
So
some,
it's-
there's some federally aligned maximums on the next slide,
Yeah.
actually. And so the variables page. So in FY '23, I'm sorry, not FY, the federal government deals in calendar years, my apologies. Calendar year 2023, the IRS maximum is $22,500. They have implemented a $7,500 catch-up contribution rule for 2023 and 2024, and so the total contribution could be $30,000 for the next 2 years. Okay. Now the 22.5, that typically goes up every year. You know, it was it was less than 22.5 a couple of years ago, so it goes up as inflation goes up. So it will change. That's not static. But for this year, next year, it's going to be $30,000.
But that includes the match, right? The $30,000 is the total that can be contributed.
That's correct. In a 403B plan, that does include the match, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken. The 457 elective plans, I think that would include the employee contribution plus the match. So, but that's not what this is. This would be the total contribution,
Okay.
including the match.
So there is no, so we don't have any sort of ceiling. You're saying 5% up to getting you to the $30,000. It's
Yeah.
not 5% or up to $2,500 per person or anything like that.
Correct.
Okay.
It would be, so, and I do need to check on that. I'm not 1,000% sure that the 30,000 does include the contribution amount. I need to double check that. But assuming that it did not include the contribution, $30,000, the maximum it would cost the district per person would be $1,500. So if you as an employee contributed $30,000 to the 403B and we did a 5% match, it would cost the district $1,500 for that person.
And then on the vesting piece of it, is it, I only know what I know, right? So vesting to me is over a number of years that each year you earn a certain percentage of whatever the company or the school district would put in. I think what you described was maybe a little different than that, if I was hearing you correctly.
So they refer to it still as a vesting schedule, even though it's just a one-year vesting schedule. We talked through the scenarios to, let's say as an example, after 1 year, you got 20% of the match. After year 2, you got 20%, year 3, 20%, and so on and so forth. That becomes administratively inefficient for us as a school district to keep up with. And I just don't think we would get the benefit from our employees to implement a complicated vesting schedule. After talking with the fellow at American Fidelity, I believe he also agreed that the shorter, the simpler the vesting period that we could put in place, and that would be, that would apply to any normal hire, any early hire, any late hire. If you started at January 1 of a given year and you were employed with the district as of June 30th and you made a 403B contribution, that would, that employee would be able to benefit from that. So, again, we can scrap that. We can do something totally different. This
I
is just the
personally
plan.
think that's super smart.
Yeah.
But so the only real requirement is that you are employed on June 30th to get that contribution for whatever you've contributed.
Correct.
Okay.
And we're like everybody else. We have folks that start and they don't stay very long in some capacity for whatever reason. And so this kind of removes those, because other districts another district that I worked for, they matched every paycheck. There was no vesting schedule on it. And so if an employee started today and they worked for 3 months with us, and I made a contribution, the district would match it, and I would leave in 3 months and walk away with that match. And, that's maybe not the best way to do that for what we're wanting to do with helping from a retention and longevity standpoint.
I just wanted, go ahead.
Oh, will the staff be able to adjust their contribution rate throughout the year? Like, will they have the option, like, let's say they start and they say, well, I can only do 2% right now, and then 3-4 months later, they're like, you know what, I can do 3% or 4%. Will they have the ability to adjust their contribution amount?
I'll have to ask about that.
Okay.
I think they can only make the adjustment during the open enrollment period.
Okay. It'd be good to know, like, it would be good for them to know if they could adjust that, so.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay.
I really appreciate this idea. I thought it was a great idea when you brought it up, Ms. McCowan. I just don't know realistically, though. I mean, I see that it would help with retention, but I don't know many folks that could contribute up to $30,000. I feel like those would be your central office folks, your superintendent kind of folks. And I don't know that they're really having an issue with retention. So if it's to fix a retention issue, I don't think it really addresses a retention issue when we have so many employees that don't even make $30,000 a year, much less be able to contribute that. So I don't know. I would like to see some statistics on retention with our folks that are making, I guess you would have, how much would you have to even make to put aside $30,000 as a contribution? Over $150,000 maybe? Like, if we could think of just a number and say, so all of our staff that make over $150,000, how big of an issue is retention? And if it's not an issue, I'm not sure this really, it's almost like a solution trying to find a problem. But I appreciate the idea and the thoughtfulness. I just don't know that the folks that we're having the retention issues with are really the folks that are like, oh, I'll throw $30,000 in and get some contribution.
Well, let me clarify that the $30,000 is the maximum. You can contribute however much money you can afford to contribute to the plan. And I've spoken to Mr. Wells about that, and he is in agreement with me, from someone that's intimately close with our employees and know what's important to them, that they think that any amounts of money that the district would be able to contribute to a retirement plan would be beneficial to them. And again, we aren't targeting employees that can only contribute $30,000. It's available to any employee that contribute whatever is important to them for their retirement, and that the district has some incentive to help with that and contribute and match with that for their retirement to help compensate some of the offsets that we know has occurred through the changes with the retirement systems through the state. So I think that if we were able to pull, and again, I don't want to overstate that if we implement this changes the retention. That's not my point. My point is that I do believe that it will impact some individuals because it's important for them to have these contributions made by the district to help their retirement. So I think there'd be a lot of those folks that would be greatly pleased with being able to get a matching contribution from the district for any amount that they're able to put aside for their retirement.
And currently,
I was just going to add on to what he's saying. I think another point that you can add to this to make it attractive to people, I don't know if you've ever seen every investment presentation I've ever been at from a 401k perspective. They'll say, okay, if you're 25 years old and you invest $5,000 over the next 3 years, what that looks like in 30 years for your retirement is huge. And I think smart financial investing at no cost to the employee, there's no cost to them for this administration of this plan. And really, any match on top of it is it's just a bonus on top of all of that. I'm thrilled, and I would be thrilled even if there wasn't a match, if we were just throwing it out there that this is available and look what this can do for you. So I think that there is no downside to this personally, but I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I was going to say, I do appreciate that, but I think if you look at what our participation rate is right now, you said it's, what was the first slide? 60 folks, something like that, so 10%. I just think a whole lot of folks are really struggling to pay their bills, their electric, to get food, groceries. I don't know that a lot of folks have this extra money to contribute to this. I almost feel like, and I know the 461,000 is the high. What you think if we have 50% participation with a full 30,000 contribution? But I'm almost like, would rather say to employees, well, we've got $500,000 that we were going to spend on matching this 403B matching thing. What would that look like, just in extra salary or something that, they could take home and use and spend today. But I definitely appreciate that planning for the future is important, and I've been through all those sales spiels with the companies doing that too. I just think realistically, if we're looking at our employees, so many are just at or near or below the poverty level, and I don't know that this really would help with retention. But if it's for another purpose, then that's great, and I appreciate the information.
I think there's a lot of studies out there that look at retirement savings and how low the average is around the country, and so this is just an avenue to give people the option to start planning and giving them a match from the district. So similar to 401k, which most private companies provide, this is just an option that, if you're starting out and you don't have the income to participate very much, but you get a raise, you're able to participate 1%, a couple years later, maybe you put 2%, maybe your spouse gets a raise and it frees up money. So this is just an avenue to give the staff an option to say, hey, there is, essentially free money here from the district for you if you are able to participate. So I think to have it there is great. Yeah, we're not saying that it's going to automatically, chances are nobody's going to max out, or not many are going to max out the $30,000. If they can, awesome. But that's just the cap. So I think it's important just to know that you as a staff have the option as you can to participate in this and to get more money from the district, even on top of your salary, that can go towards your retirement and help you in those years. So.
And just to add to that, speaking with the actuaries or the gentleman from American Fidelity, private industries have a 90% participation rate with a match. Okay, school districts, he said, if they have a really aggressive match, are going to have a 50 to 60% participation rate. With this match, I think we fell comfortably in the 30% would be the final contribution rate after we give it a couple of years to kind of settle in. And so as I illustrated out the assumptions here, I think the middle one, the 30% participation with half contribution to get to that cost to the district, I think in a couple of years would be a reasonable, I think that'd be likely to some degree. The cost to the district, as illustrated currently, is $3,960. So that's what it costs the district. If your assumption is the case, then it's going to cost us $4,000 to implement this plan. Otherwise, what do we have to lose? So that would be my recommendation, to do the 5% match with the 1-year vesting period. And if you guys give me the go-ahead, I'll have American Fidelity create those plan documents to bring back. Otherwise, we'll punt and do something different.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Right now, what sort of marketing and education do we do with the employees of the district on what a 403B is and how it can impact them?
I cannot answer that, as I do not have purview over that.
I see Mr. Wells making his way up.
Better articulate that one.
American Fidelity being our provider, they're the ones that do that, and they'll come in and offer to meet with every employee at least, was it twice a year, once in the fall, once in the spring, or is it once a year?
Our employees are we're required to offer.
To sign off, yeah.
Plans, and so coinciding with open enrollment, essentially, actually he's in our district right now, all employees are required to meet with him. They don't have to buy anything, don't have to purchase anything, but we as a district have to offer that, and so that's the way we account for that, is they have to meet with them and just sign off that they've met. So they have an opportunity to go over all those plans. We have other groups we also work with, Kentucky Deferred Comp and a couple others that will come in at various points throughout the year. But around open enrollment is when we send out the majority of the promotion of those types of things that we offer. And then at new teacher orientation, that's always something I hit with our new teachers about the different plans that we have to offer, and encourage them to look into those. So that's what we do.
Great, thank you. So are you looking for action tonight on this?
I guess the only action I need is the board interested in moving forward with getting plan documents together that match this proposal?
Okay, do we need a motion to do that, I would assume? Or is it's already in existence, so it's really just the match piece of it, right?
We already have a 403B, yes. We would just have to create the plan documents around the match and get those approved at a future board meeting. The timing, with open enrollment coming, it'd be my preference to try to get all this resolved by probably the October board meeting, November at the latest. They did tell me that they can make anything work if we didn't get it approved until December, let's say, but the sooner the better from open enrollment. That way we can communicate it to everyone as we're doing the open enrollment process.
So Mr. Smith, tonight, we just need a thumbs up. Yeah, let's move forward, talking with them about putting together a plan, right? This has been informational.
Correct.
And would you like for us to move forward?
So,
And with any other variable, if,
The board would still have to approve whatever the plan is.
that's correct.
Yeah, this is just putting together a plan. Yeah, no, we're just letting you get the plan. Yes.
Telling me what needs to be in the plan if we proceed with the plan. It's 5% match, community vesting, that sort of thing.
so do we need to vote on that?
I would think so.
Okay.
I would think.
That
Can we
was my
vote on it
question.
being that
It's
it's
not on the
in?
agenda.
It is in the items, it
the
is listed as
superintendent's
action
presentation.
requested at this meeting on the summary page, which is why I asked the question earlier on this. So it is listed as action requested at this meeting. I know it says 403B presentation, but there is action on the attachments for us. I don't see a reason why we couldn't.
Since there's no approval of a formal plan, though, could he just go ahead and put together a plan with Mayor Cadelli and bring it back without an approval, bring it back for approval at that point?
Right, yeah, if there's not going to be a cost to the district associated with, or a financial commitment on behalf of the district associated with getting the plan, I don't know that you need a vote and a motion for that. You would bring the plan to the board for approval, and certainly you could get the board's feedback, tonight in open, in open session, but I don't think you need a motion just for him to put the proposal together.
Okay, that was where I was confused with how all of this was written, so it's fine. Okay, so then, general commentary, we'll start, Ms. McCowan, do you have any,
I don't have any questions. Thank you. That was very informative.
and you're okay with moving forward with putting a plan
Yeah,
together?
I would be happy to look at
Okay,
any
so-
plan that you bring back in next month.
Okay, Ms. Glass?
Agree, same with me. Thank you for the information.
Okay.
Yep,
Mr.
agreed.
Bricker? Ms. Springate?
Yeah, I appreciate the information. I hope in the plan, if we can somehow tighten up the cost, 4,000 up to almost $500,000. It's just hard to kind of vote on that and say, well, if it's 4,000, maybe you go for it, but if it's $500,000, maybe you don't. And then the only other thing I would say is, not to be a spoiler alert, but later in the budget presentation, it looks like we're looking at a $1.6 million per year negative cash flow. So I think it's going to be really important to know if this is going to be a $500,000 cost to the district or a $4,000 cost, or to get just some kind of an idea. I don't know if you can poll the staff or something of that nature, but I think that would be very important. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Smith. Okay. Next, we have our middle school presentation. What's that? Hello.
Got it. Hello. We'll try that. All right. Well, welcome to WCMS. We are going to talk just a couple of things. Our theme for the year, our big rocks, and then I have some students here that are going to present on What's Up Woodford for you all. So, Tigers Together. This is our theme for this school year. This is something that we have really centered all of our work around. My hope here as the principal is just to really create just a sense of unity. With collaborating with our staff, having our students collaborate. I want to engage our families and get them in and just really build that sense of family. That's the middle school that I know when I taught here, and so I want to just keep that family alive. So really, just Tigers Together is just a reminder that we're all in this together. So our big rocks for this year are a focus on Tier 1, PLCs, and relationships. The first big rock is kind of broken up into two parts. So the first part of it is formative assessment. So we've really put an emphasis on just intentional daily formative assessment. So we're providing our teachers just with various strategies that they can use to formatively assess students. And so this can look like a lot of things. My favorite is through collaboration. So those are just some pictures of some of our students collaborating in classrooms. The second part of this is a focus on behavior and classroom management. And so our intention with this was to just increase employability percentages. So every day at WCMS, we ask our students to be respectful, responsible, and ready. And we're tracking this data on our EOS system. And then every 2 weeks, our students are rewarded with Tiger Times based off of that employability percentage. So teachers will host a fun room. You can see there are game boards. We have silent ball, we have kids going outside and playing kickball, we have movie rooms, we have reading rooms, just really trying to cater to things that our students like. And so teachers will host this, and it's just a chance for us a chance for us to get to celebrate our students and just to celebrate their successes with their employability. So. The second big rock that we're focusing on is PLC. So with PLC, we are just really utilizing formative assessment and benchmark data to determine just instructional practices that are based on standard mastery. So we are really focusing on students mastering a standard. So with this came a shift away from MAP testing, which is something that everybody knows and is very familiar with, and we are moving to a new benchmark assessment called Mastery View Predictive Assessment. And so with this benchmark assessment, it's really going to give us a chance to see how students are mastering standards on a very individualized level. And last is my favorite rock. I am all about having fun and ensuring that our students are having fun, and it really goes back to what you said, Mr. Adkins, about just our kids just having experiences in middle school. Middle school can be such a hard time for kids, and they think that, but really middle school can be really fun, and that's what I hope that we're providing for our students here. So this is my favorite rock. I want to have fun. I want to celebrate our kids. I want to be intentional about the culture that we're building for our teachers, our students, and our families that are here at the middle school. So we are doing a couple of things, and the next couple of slides are really just pictures. So we're highlighting our students who are receiving recognition referrals. We've got the mascot at games. That's a picture of some more of our students just enjoying Tiger Time. The absolute best day of the week is dog treat day. So if you ever need to start your day right, please come and pass out dog treats with me on Thursdays. You cannot not smile when a dog pulls up. So this is Cash and Jolie and Louie, and they come every Thursday, and they know when they get in line that they're getting a treat, and they get so excited. They're really fun. So come any Thursday. Our students love Free Seat Friday. So really we've been promoting this as a competition between grade levels to see who can have the best employability percentage. And so they get free seats. Sometimes they get DJ. Mr. Norton plays a really good DJ sometimes. There's been the occasional dance-off, a dance party, a sing-along. I'm really impressed with some of the songs that they know. So, and then lastly, just a focus on just building our culture with our teachers. When I taught here, we were a family. I want my teachers to have that same feeling. So we're doing things like the teacher tailgate that you mentioned, staff outings, and just various team buildings. So really, I'm going to turn it over to the real stars of the show, and they're here to talk about, and I just have your slides up here. So they're here to talk about their media production class and how it ties in with our Portrait of a Learner. Come on up.
Hello. What were you going to say? What was I going to say? Okay, well, we're going to talk about kind of how media production uses Portrait of a Learner in our classroom. Oh, wait, look at that. I didn't even know. Wild. Hang on, what's the arrow? It's that one. Oh. The big question. Wait, were you supposed to do that? Yes, I was. Yeah, okay. So we're wondering how media production uses the Portrait of... Okay, we already said that, didn't we? All right, what is media production? Well, you put the... Because that's the... Anyways, in media production, we are trusted with creating the media that our school uses. We create websites, news shows, and more. I think it was this one. That's yours. No, that's you. What? That's you. Oh, yeah. So, in media production, we come across a lot of problems, either technical, whatever. And so we use Creative Problem Solver to help us push past those. So, we use help from others, our own knowledge, and we create something new and even more effective than what we initially thought. And that results in original content that the school gets to enjoy. If we don't understand something, Ms. Joyner always encourages us to ask new questions and ask for help as well. That's yours.
We contribute responsibility in our classrooms. We are expected to commit to every project, no matter how hard or how small it is, including to help our team by using the skills that we learn in there. We collaborate with others to invent new ideas, innovations, and solutions for others and ourselves in our lives.
We become empathetic communicators. Partner work is a huge part of our classroom, so we need to learn how to work together successfully. As a team, compromising and communication are key in creating a successful project. We use different tools to express an idea together, such as Canva, WeVideo, Google Slides, drawings, and sites, as well as Padlet. If we have a specific idea/tone we want to portray to our school through media, we can use tools such as these to communicate. For example, we had posters made to get students excited about our news show. Yeah, we also have a picture of filming What's Up Woodford, and you can kind of see how we have to communicate. There's a lot of silent communication that goes into that. Gracias.
Thanks.
All right, and that's really all that I have for you. Just going back to, I thought I had one last slide. It just tigers together. So I tell our students every day, just remember that you are loved. And I hope that they know that. I hope that we're building a culture that reflects that. And you guys are welcome to come by anytime. All right, thanks.
Miss Preston, I want to sing your praises just a little bit. I've had several parents reach out to me. I've had staff reach out. They're loving the culture. They're loving things going on. Just excited about what you're doing. So thank you. You and your staff. Thank you.
Okay, we are moving on to our opportunity for audience public comment. I think we have 0 today. So I'm going to ask that we take a 5-minute recess, just a quick break, and then we will resume with the consent agenda. Okay, I think, are we all ready? I think we're all back in place. All right. Thank you all for giving us that short break. We're going to move on in the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Yep, Ms. Glass got the motion, Mr. Brickler got the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
The motion passes 3-2. Moving on to the regular agenda, is there a motion to accept notification of personnel matters?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Mr. Brickler. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Can I have a motion to accept notification of payment of bills?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. McCowan,
Second.
second by Ms. Glass. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Can I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of the August 28th, 2023 board meeting?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Ms. McCowan. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Can I have a motion to approve the creation of our positions?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. McCowan,
Second.
second by, who was it? Who got it? Ms. Springate?
Sure.
Any discussion?
Yes, I just want to clarify that the positions are all, they're not funded with general fund. They're all through federal or state grants.
Yes, all through
Yep.
federal. It's Title I Part C is migrant funding. We actually have carryover that we've requested to roll over to this year. But again, it's not out of general fund, it's all migrant funding.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you,
Anything
Ron.
else? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Can I have a motion to approve the pilot of standards-based grading in just 4th and 5th grades?
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Mr. Brickler. Any discussion?
I really appreciate the presentation that you did earlier in explaining things. How will this be rolled out to parents? What is the timeline, that sort of thing?
It's a lot of that communication that you saw this evening has started there was an intro letter, and I'll be honest, it wasn't until later we discovered the conflict with the policy and how it referenced 4th and 5th grades in district level policy. So we're asking for that today. But again, a lot of what you saw today, this is a key point because we're hitting midterm. So a lot of the communication graphics and things like that are being used, whether through parent nights that schools are hosting or individual conferences. In fact, that was the request for a one-pager, something real simple that a teacher can use in a parent conference. So those are the main strategies. And I do want to clarify, it is actually third, so as I mentioned before, K through 2 has always had this, this process. It is actually 3, 4, and 5. The reason I'm only referring to 4th and 5th is because that's what it mentions in the board policy, that 4th and 5th will follow the traditional based percentage grade A through F scale. So it is actually 3rd through 5th, the pilot, but again, only 4th and 5th here because that's referenced in the policy. So I'm basically asking for permission to go outside of the policy for this year to run this pilot program rather than to change the whole policy when we don't really know specifically what changes we want just yet.
Just to clarify, or I guess just to double check with our attorney, so we're not going to be following policy on the grading for 4th and 5th, because our policy specifically says how that's done. Is there a better way or a different way of approving a pilot and then just knowingly violating the policy? I understand that we don't want to necessarily change the policy before you do the pilot, But at the same time, I just, as a parent, if I'm looking through and seeing, oh, this is how it works here, here's the policy, and then knowing that the board's just not following that, that caused me a little bit of concern.
Sure. You know, I think by board action, you can modify policies. I mean, I think, yeah, I know it takes two readings.
And we're not doing that tonight.
Right. Yeah, I would want to look at that and get back to you.
Well, and it sounds like time is of the essence, Mr.
Yeah.
Because you're thinking about implementing like midterms, which are in a week or two.
A matter of days, honestly.
Gotcha.
And like I said, this is an oversight of the committee, the team that I mentioned. It actually came to my attention with LaShannon Stratton, who is our overall IC clerk. And I was talking to her about making these changes within IC, and she's like, well, wait a minute, our policy refers to this. And I was like, uh-oh. Okay, so here's Plan B, and here's how we're going to approach that in full transparency.
So there's no way to approve just an exception to the policy for this period, which I think is what Mr. Asher's asking for?
I think what you could do, and I would want to confirm this before we do it at a meeting, is you can vote on it tonight. You can do the policy amendment to put the exception in there and do your 2 readings and ratify that later. But yeah, I don't think there's a way to modify the policy tonight.
I guess the question is, do we have to modify it? If we approve to say we're an exception to the policy, I mean, we had to have done that during COVID times where we weren't following policy to the letter on items. How did we get around items then? Is there, I guess I'm just trying to think of a way that we can help push along Mr. Asher's initiative here.
And I'm sympathetic to that. I think, and I'm trying to think creatively, but I think during COVID, there were a lot of emergency exceptions in place, and so that let you do some things procedurally that weren't necessarily up for, or that aren't allowed in regular circumstances. But I think if you're going to deviate from policy, you've got to change the policy. Now you can, I'd have to look to make sure, but I think you could set a special meeting and to get your readings in that way.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, that was going to be my suggestion. Since time is of the essence, could you potentially figure this information out for us tomorrow, get back with the board?
Absolutely.
And then if this is something that we did a special, if we were able to make an amendment, or we didn't have to have 2 readings, or whatever, to try to expedite it, and we could have a special later this week before fall break. What kind of timeline are you looking at, Mr. Asher? Like, you have a couple day ASAP, right?
Progress reports come out next week, or this week, I guess, right?
The grades were due this week. I'm not certain if they're sending them home Friday or after the break. Okay. I'll need to check on that.
So is there any length of time that needs to pass between readings of the policies?
I'll have to look, and I can
Okay.
get back to you on that tonight, or I can get back to you first thing in the morning. But and I can set out, here's the earliest we could do it based on when you
Okay.
have a special meeting and what the timeline is, and I can communicate that.
If
to
you could
all.
do that,
But
that would be
I don't
great.
want to misspeak, speaking.
Well, and I do think, my suggestion would be maybe, since this is on the agenda, to go ahead and have maybe could we do a first reading just based on the differences that he's explained to us tonight? Even though we don't have it, you normally give us the writing and policy and we can review it that way, but just based on the changes that you're representing to us tonight, and go ahead and do a first reading tonight, and then for the special meeting, have the second reading so that it would be even more quickly instead of having 2 additional meetings?
I don't think so, because the draft policy would need to be included with the agenda with the language.
Gotcha.
I can go type it up real quick.
Get back to us.
I think it's a difficult situation because we're kind of up against a wall with what he's trying to accomplish in like days. What would this setback? I mean, it kind of sounds like it's a hard spot to be in with the policy and not doing this kind of in the way it typically goes. What would be the setback for you on if we can't do this right now? Like, what would change practically?
You know, honestly, and I can get that date. The hardest, like, even midterms, they're updates, but they're not as like concrete as their 9-week grade, right? So really, that is the hardest line we're up against. You don't have that 9-week, do you, off the top of your head? I'd have to look that up. Okay. That is the one that we're really up against. And gosh, I wish I knew that off the top of my head.
I think maybe if you could go back and
Yeah.
give us what is the fastest timeline that we could get this approved in, that would be, I think,
that's the
helpful.
advisement.
I don't think it would be a super, go ahead.
I didn't mean to, I'm so
No,
sorry,
you're
but I
fine.
just found a waiver of board policy. So that waiver
Okay.
policy. The waiver of policies policy. So, it's administration policy 02.432. Now, this states that a principal may submit to the superintendent a written request to waive board policy for areas outside the authority of the council. And I'm assuming by that they mean the site-based decision-making council?
Yes.
So I don't know if site-based needs to be involved in this or not. And then it says it shall not be necessary to request a waiver when the council has authority for a policy area. But the superintendent presents the request to the board along with a recommendation to approve or deny the request. And then the council, if it was applicable, would have the opportunity to address the board to support or to provide support for that request.
So does that seem more complicated than what we're trying to do? If you're getting now every SBDM involved to do that at each school, to submit that to the superintendent, to then submit to us, it might
Depends
be.
from the principal, but.
Well, from fourth principals.
And
While you research, would you be able to find if there's any other waivers that would make this work?
Yeah, I mean, what I'll do is go to the drawing board of the
Yeah.
policies and figure out what is the fastest way to
Yeah.
get it done.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you go that route, what you could do is have a standard letter that you send to each of the principals for them to sign off on to make the request, so that, you know, all your requests are uniform. But
Connect with them tomorrow.
Right,
That would be
yeah.
very easy.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I mean, we could get that done quickly, but let me, either tonight or first thing in the morning, I can get to you with, this is the fastest way to accomplish
I think
this.
that makes sense.
Without stepping aside from
Yeah.
what we need to do with policy, because I'm
Right,
cautious to
sure.
avoid, to say you don't need to,
Right.
you know, you can't ignore the
And,
policy.
and part of this that's going to happen, so the original proposal was, hey, let's do this pilot so we don't have to change the policy because we don't know what we want or we're ready for. So we're kind of forcing a policy change that we may go back later. So if you do this and you decide it's not what we want, or we may amend or change the policy again later, which is fine.
I don't think it'll be, I know it won't be very difficult, because it's gonna be changing a couple of numbers. Because right
Right.
now it references K through 3, and I don't remember the language but essentially talking about standards-based grading in so many words. And it says 4 through 12 is going to be on this grading scale. The percentages so I'm going to, I would change that number
Yeah.
to be, yeah, there we go. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so it references primary grades K through 3, but then it goes on to say the following grading standards shall be adhered to for students in grades 4 through 5, and it has the A, B, C, D, and instead of, the difference here between 6 through 12 is it's a U instead of an F for 59 and below. So essentially it would remove that part, and you'd put K through 5 in the first part that I read.
And Mr. Asher, I'm sure you've checked, but is it policy or AP that you're quoting?
This is policy, I'm pretty sure. Yes. .221.
I was hoping it was AP, because we could go around. Thanks.
So, yes. I apologize. We didn't know it would be this complicated. It was something after the fact, after we had started the wheels in motion. Again, referring to that group that's leading this, the teachers and principals. And LaShannon brought us back in. Well, we can't make these changes officially with this policy in place. So
The waiver may help if you can't make, if you don't want to make a policy change, you know what I mean? And it could be as simple as a template letter from all of the principals.
because one item what did you say about if it's under the councils?
It says, the principal may support the request to waive policy for areas that are outside of the authority of the council.
Right there. So the grading policy is not under authority of the council. That's a district
So it would
level.
be the principals that would submit a written request.
To the principal, who then submits,
The
I meant to
principal.
superintendent, who then
Just
submits
principals
to
to
us.
Yeah.
But then he still has to submit to us, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I still
But that
think,
doesn't
I
take
think,
readings.
right, but I
Mhm.
still, if we can
Yeah.
just take a look and see what's the
Yeah.
fastest way to do this, I
Absolutely.
think that makes sense.
I'll get that to you first thing.
So do we need to, can we table this?
Sounds like we're gonna have
Or
to.
do we need to, do we, well, yeah.
I think we already have a motion in a second, right?
We do have a motion and a second, but, because I
vote
think
it
that
down,
I think we'll need to vote on it, right? Because the motion won't be the same. It'll either be to approve an exception or to approve a new policy.
You could just
So-
withdraw or table, either one.
Who made the motion?
Motion is made by Ms. Glass and seconded by Mr. Brickler.
I'll withdraw my motion.
I'll withdraw.
You withdraw the motion and then
With-
table the agenda item.
Okay.
Okay.
You take it up either at a special meeting or the next meeting.
Okay, so Ms. Glass and Mr. Brickler have withdrawn their motions, and we will table this until the next.
Could I, well, you probably can't do this knowingly. I was going to say, could you approve the pilot? And then that just means we can move ahead with the understanding that the policy will be changed, or you don't want that approval because we know what's on the books? Okay. Okay.
So, we'll table this until the very first opportunity we have, the very next opportunity that we have to make a decision, either voting on a waiver or voting on a reading of a new policy. And hopefully that can be either way.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Quickly. Okay, thanks, Mr. Asher. Okay, next item is to approve the 2023-2024 working budget. Mr. Smith?
All right, so I'll start on the very first slide. As you guys are well aware by now of the draft budget schedule. It's due in January, the tentative is due in May of each year, and the working budget is due by the end of September of each year, and we are going to be talking about the working budget. So, there have been several changes to the budget since we looked at it in May at the tentative budget. And so the very first one, and I'll just admit now, Bob, you can write this down. I made a slight mistake when I calculated the beginning balance in our budget. I was a little too conservative, but that's all right. I stand by that I'd rather be too conservative than not conservative enough. And I was a little bit low on our beginning balance, and so that's going to increase by $3.6 million, okay? The adjusted local tax revenue is $1.4 million. We increased that when we did the tax rates. The adjusted contingency expense has gone up. I put that back to what it was in last year and in previous years, approximately $6 million. The big change that was sort of unintended and unforeseen was the reduction in our SEEK funding, and I'm going to go through the reconciliation in that in just a moment, but that went down $1 million. And then due to the adjustment in SEEK, that also reduced our capital outlay revenue and our building fund revenue by those amounts listed below. The key takeaway that I just want to point out and make everyone aware of, obviously this was not the intended scenario when we approved the raises back in May with all the raises that we did, but we estimated that was going to be approximately $2 million of recurring expense every year. And we did the revenue growth rate in the fall, and that increased by approximately $1.4 million. But that SEEK negative cash flow, or the SEEK reduction, kind of changes that scenario. And so right now, with just the way the new revenue and the new expenses are going to hit our this year's budget and all future year budgets, it has created about a $1.6 million negative cash flow amount every year that we just have to be aware of. The budget, all of this is taken into consideration in the budget for this year, and it will be accounted for in next year's budget with the beginning balance that we have extra at the beginning of the year. So, you know, all things being equal, we're in an okay position from a cash standpoint. But in future years, you know, the tax rate issue is always a big one. But, you know, anytime we give raises, that's a recurring expense that has to be considered along with the recurring revenue that has to be considered in the future. So I just wanted to point that out. But again, we're fine in the budget. And with that said,
Could we go back to the last slide and just
Yep.
talk for just a minute? I really feel like that the last slide is just vindication for what I've been saying for the past year, and it's the reason that we need to have open discussions. I think having discussions and talking about the budget, and when I say things are off by millions, and we're looking at the end of the year balance of 6.5 million, yet our revenue and our expenses are clearly showing that we're going to end, you know, around 10 million, but we're still being told meeting after meeting, month after month, that that's not the case. So I really appreciate actually just seeing that slide. And then the other point I would make is that raising taxes, the maximum 4% every year, is one way to think about balancing a budget. But another way to think about balancing a budget is looking at your expenses and cutting expenses that are not necessary, cutting things that are not giving us bang for our buck. And really just goes back to a couple of other points that I've made this past year. One is we need to understand how much we were supplanting general fund with our ESSER dollars. We've never had that discussion, never had that conversation. And that's important because those expenses then come back to the district. And then the other thing is that it's just vitally important that we understand our staffing. It's such a huge percentage of our general fund expenses. And I think that I've asked multiple times that we have that discussion too. How many folks did we add at central office? What was the cost of that? How many folks have we added in schools? What was the cost of that? We're at a point, and really any responsible budgeting folks board should have been at the point long ago where we need to say, we don't have enough money for everything. What is the most important thing? Let's talk about our priorities. And so I'm hopeful that that's something that we can do as a board.
all right, the next slide shows the SEEK adjustments, and I just wanted to kind of point out the changes. It's really hard for me to see, so the first number is the assessment, the upper left. It shows, and this is the SEEK document that was provided by KDE back in the spring that we did the tentative budget on. It shows the assessment value, that's the upper left-hand number. The prior year, end of year AADA is 3687.100. So as you are aware, our funding is based off of that AADA. It has been frozen since COVID came along. It's been frozen to the 2018, 2019 data. So we've not had to make that adjustment. We've not had to deal with that in the last few years. And so in the middle column, you'll see the guaranteed base at $4,200 per pupil was $15,405,820. And so that's what you start out with, and then you have to go down to that less 30-cent local effort. And so KDE with this formula incentivizes districts to take the local tax rates to help grow revenue. And so when you have assessment growth, they multiply your assessments by 30% and reduce that number out of your SEEK allotment here. Okay, so you can see our initial allotment was $10,177,162. The very bottom number would be the next one I'd point out. The net general fund SEEK initially was $10,696,294. And so if you skip to the next page, it shows the new assessments. The prior year ADA has dropped down to 3639.885. And my only comment about that, there was just an article today in the KSBA magazine that I read about how multiple districts across the state are down double-digit percentage in the AADA. I don't know exactly what our percentage decrease was, but I think just 47, if I'm doing the math correctly in my head, 47 is the number difference between the 18-19 data and the current year data. So I doubt that that puts us in one of the very high percentiles as far as a reduction. I think we're probably on the lower end of that range. But to show you how it adjusts the guaranteed base back to the middle column, it reduced that down to 15,287, and then down to the local effort, that number was reduced down to 10,877, which reduces the total overall SEEK at the bottom to 9,579,146. And on the very next slide, the SEEK adjustment, I tried to reconcile that to where it makes sense. I know some of this stuff is not easy to read and understand, and I do try to present it as conceptually as I can for folks to be able to understand it. But the original SEEK column, that's what was on the original one back in the spring. The updated one is on the one I just showed you. And you can see the difference. So our guaranteed base, based on the AADA change, reduced our SEEK by $198,303, the less the 30-cent local effort. So not to belabor this, I know this isn't a tax hearing, but had we not taken the tax rate, our revenue would have been decreased by that number regardless, just because our assessments went up. So our 30-cent local effort decreased by $700,284. There's another adjusted Tier 1 reduction, and that's through that equalization formula that KDE has, and that's another story for another day. But the total SEEK reduction is $1,117,148. Okay.
Oh, my goodness. Not to belabor the point, but I think that it was entirely foreseeable that our SEEK would be decreased based just on attendance and numbers. And I think that's probably, what happened to the vast majority of districts in Kentucky. I do have a couple of questions. We get a daily attendance email, some days, most days, from Mr. Atkins, and he shows us as having around 3,900 students every day. So I'm wondering why our SEEK is based on, 36, whatever the number was on the slide.
I'll let Mr. Wells articulate about how the AADA comes about.
Yeah, and the only reason I ask is because when we get that email, it says we're at like 95, 96%, almost every day. And so 95, 96%, 3,900 students is a little bit different than what we're seeing on this adjustment.
Yeah, so the 3,900 is our actual enrollment. The AADA, which that's the end number when the state looks at your percentage of students that actually show up every day, then they add in some other calculations, special ed and things like that. So that number is always going to be lower. That's closer to the actual number of students. The AADA is closer to the actual number of students that are showing up every day after they've made the adjustment. So the 3,900 is the number we have enrolled. The AADA is how many we have show up with those adjustments.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I just don't understand how we could be at 95, over 90% every day in our daily email for 3,900 students, yet when we get the KDE document, it clearly says 38 something, 36 something. So that's a little concerning. Is there a particular day that we get that snapshot that they're going to use for the calculation for the AADA for our SEEK formula? And if so, I think that would be the day we would want to get the email about our percentage and our student number instead of getting something every day that really is very misleading when you look at what we're actually being funded on. And then the other thing is there a date? I'm sorry.
Well, the AADA, that is something that is at the end of the year. They go back and look at the entire year's attendance. So there's not a date.
It's not a snapshot?
It's not a snapshot, no. It is a cumulative average number that's been adjusted for all those other things.
So that would be something helpful to have at the end of the school year. I think that would be nice if we could get that information at a meeting. And then the other thing is, I know in the magazines and on the news, Mr. Smith, they have talked about some possible legislation changes. Do you have any kind of updates on that as far as the SEEK maybe being based on enrollment instead of ADA?
I just know the conversation has been talked about changing from AADA to
enrollment.
ADM, which I think is based on enrollment. I am unsure and have not heard anything as far as where that's at in the legislature and if that's going to be changed or not. But that's been talked about because of what we're experiencing along with basically 165 other districts.
Yeah. Well, we will be able to advocate for that hopefully at the meeting and maybe with our local legislators. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. All right, so the next slide, just briefly, we'll go through the different funds. And so the revenues for the general fund would be $55,255,931. And then I'm not going to read these numbers. The special revenue fund is the grant fund, the capital outlay 310, building fund 320, food service fund, the after-school program fund. So all funds excluding the contingency and the trust agency funds would be $67,187,448. The next table shows the working budget beginning balance, and that's where I adjusted the beginning balance up to 10 million. The local general fund revenue would be 22,866,070. The state general fund revenue is the 9,617,429. And then in the general fund, we get a small federal general fund revenue, $80,000, and then other receipts. And then on behalf payments, our on behalf payments for FY23 were $12,546,719. I just duplicate those from year to year because those adjust based on what our on behalf payments are that the state makes on our behalf. And again, those are non-cash transactions. We don't get the cash revenue in, nor do we expend the cash revenue, but we are required to reflect that on our financial statements. The next slide talks about how the expenses are broke down by function. So the instruction is the majority of the dollars, 26,079,904. You got student support services, instructional staff support services, district admin, school admin, all the way down plant maintenance, operations, transportation, all the way to the bottom. And less the contingency, the budget's $49,255,930, and then there I bumped the contingency back to $6 million as it was in previous years for a total of $55,255,930.
It's the working budget for 23-24. I didn't notice when I looked at it earlier, but I just noticed it says 21 to 24. That's not a average or anything like that, right? It's just 23-24. And the title of the cells.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I didn't notice it earlier, but I just saw it.
No, that's the 23-24 budget, sorry.
Gotcha. Thank
Sorry
you.
about
No,
that.
no problem. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't an average or something.
Yeah. And in the next slide, KDE defines the total budget as the budget expenditures in the general and the food service funds, excluding the contingency. The budgeted reserve, or contingency as we call it, in the draft budget has been determined accordingly. The FY24 contingency is approximately 11%. So this equates to approximately the amount of operating cash required from July 1 to November tax payments are received. And so the reason I put that in is the contingency kind of has to stay because of the way our revenues are structured. We don't get all of our tax payments usually until November, right? So from July 1 of every year until November when we get our tax payments, I have to carry enough cash balance to be able to make debt service payments, make payrolls and all the things. And so that kind of equates to around roughly a little less than $6 million. And so that's kind of where I set the contingency. And you know, I think a lot of people in my position would say a 10% contingency is about right. So we're a little bit over that at 11%. So I just wanted to explain that real briefly. The next slide talks about the debt service payments. So our debt service for fiscal year, and that should be 24, I'm sorry, is $4,444,000.76. Of that total revenue budgeted for debt, the building fund has $3,698,124. The capital outlay is $363,124, and there will be a general fund transfer for approximately $381,963 to pay the debt service. All right. What other questions do you guys have about the budget?
I have just a few questions. So just to be clear, the instruction, like the slide that you had that broke down the general fund into instruction and several other things.
Yep.
Yes, thank you. That is primarily personnel, that's like payroll?
Yeah, about around 80% would be a really close percentage of our total. Our total budget, 80% would be payroll.
Okay.
So I think you could apply that to just about every one of those functions. 80% of that number would be approximately payroll and benefits, so.
Okay. So, okay, student support services, instructional staff support services would be the same thing. What expenses fall under business support services?
That would, I'll have to look for sure, for 2,500, but those are going to be a lot of the things that flow through just the operation of the school district.
So like central office type
Yeah,
functions?
I'm sure like finance would be a huge part of that, business support services, but it wouldn't be just finance. There'd be anything related to, the way the coding works is anything that's rolled up that would be construed as a business support service through any department would roll up into that function and be reported there. So it could be from instructional staff, it could come from a secretary's position at a school, could roll up into that, but that's what it would be for.
Can you talk a little bit about the $1.6 million, the negative cash flow? So what is that going to mean? I mean, this is
Well,
where we're at.
in a nutshell, it means that our expenses are, now, these are estimates, not actual, right? These are based on estimates, based on what we did with raises back in May, based on what we've done with taxes. Obviously, things can be completely different. Expenditures can be lower, revenues can be higher, but based on the best estimates. I hear the words easily and clearly, and that is not from my vantage point when I look at budgetary things. Things are not clear and not always easily identified. Lots of expenditures flow through that are not necessarily always accounted for, and so, but from the best estimates that we can put forth based on those two big changes with the tax, with the payroll expenses, is that we have $1.6 million more in expenses per year on revenue than we have, more expenses than we have revenue. All right, so what that's not taking into consideration are balances that are carried forward. For example, we carried forward a bigger beginning balance this year than what I anticipated, to be quite honest, in May. And so, but that's a good thing. That allows us to kind of absorb this $1.6 million negative cash flow and allows us to be able to sustain that longer, right? Because the expense side is not going to change until, and it's payroll related, so the only way that equation changes is to reduce your payroll obligation. And you can figure out how you have to do that, but that's the only way you get that number to go down in the future, is to reduce your payroll obligation or increase the revenue side. And so we know how you have to do that, so.
And to be clear, on the reduction in the SEEK, the main reason for that reduction in SEEK was due to assessments increasing. And as our property tax assessments increase, it's actually a negative to our SEEK calculation. That means we have to cover more of what they've provided in the past. So, and that, I don't know how we could determine what that could be, which I think is one of the reasons why typically you do want to make sure that we're covered with whatever tax rate you're assigning, or whatever tax increase and rate, I guess, you're assigning for the year. But that was mainly due to assessments.
That's correct.
I'm sorry, when were those provided?
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and also to be clear, if you have an enrollment of 4,000 students, then your seat number is going to be significantly higher than if you have an enrollment number of 3,600 students. Your dollar amount will be significantly higher. And then the other thing is, you know, it's like a teeter-totter. You do the 4% maximum increase, then you're going to be getting less from the state. You're getting more locally. And in Woodford County, last time I checked, we were well over 60%. I'm sure it's even higher after the 4% tax increases of the past few years that's being funded locally, that's going into that SEEK formula. So it's not, you know, 50-50 with the state. I mean, we are way off balance. And so the more that you do the 4% increases locally, the less that you're going to receive from the state too. So there's a lot of factors in that SEEK thing, but I definitely think it's foreseeable when you're talking about enrollment and just attendance trends throughout Kentucky and the nation since COVID. I think that's entirely foreseeable.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. We did anticipate the adjusted average daily attendance decrease. I remember having several conversations about to expect a SEEK or a reduction in the SEEK funding due to that. What we didn't anticipate, and it was sort of masked in the last 3 years with the assessment growth that we've had and that frozen AADA, it was sort of kind of masked in that SEEK formula, the SEEK reduction due to that local effort, because we've had some pretty significant assessment growth in the last several years, which is a good thing, right? It's just the way the SEEK formula is created, it is to incentivize, and this is out of the mouth of Che Ritter, who's over the district of the director of district division and support of budgeting. You know, it's incentivize the district to fund themselves locally out of the local tax dollars. So.
And I just have one quick question. I know, voted for and approved the financial report in June. It was approved and done in July, and that was after the change with the financial reports and not being able to have discussion. But there were no attachments for period 12 to that agenda. Is that something you could go back and maybe add in so that we can kind of just see? Because what I'm wondering is, where did we actually end on instruction for last fiscal year? Because again, another one of my concerns is that instead of leaving all of the, $10 million or so dollars in the contingency so that the board has oversight in how that is spent, it looks like about, maybe a little more than $4 million is just kind of sprinkled in throughout the different categories. And again, when that happens, the board loses oversight of those funds. And so I see it's at 26 million here, and I'm just wondering where we actually ended last year to kind of see if that estimate makes sense or if it's in line. I know, and I can figure it out myself if that just gets attached.
Well, the period 13 documents, which are those are the final numbers, whatever's on that are the most accurate, the period 13, so.
Yeah, I want to see it before the adjustments are made. I want to see it like at the end of the fiscal year on June 30th, what that number is. Because I think probably all of these adjustments and all these things that are happening in that period 13 that lasts for a long, long time are not things that we've ever really discussed. They're not numbers that we've ever talked about because it happens after the annual financial report is submitted. And so the numbers just vary by, millions sometimes. And so I'm just interested in seeing it on the date the fiscal year ended, June 30th.
So, Mr. Smith, can I just ask a quick question on the tail of that? When we look at any report that's referencing prior fiscal year after the fiscal year has been closed and audited, wouldn't that include period 13?
It would.
Okay.
Yeah.
So any balance that you're looking at in Munis that is prior year already includes period 13 because it is an actual accounting period and it does count for the actual expenses and frankly any revenue adjustments that might happen in that as well. But
Yep.
it should be in inherently any final number that we're looking at. Right now it probably is not final because the audit is not final.
Well, and period 13 hasn't ended. So what I'm saying is I would like to know at the end of the fiscal year what our number is, what our bank balance is. Just like when I get my bank statements from the bank, when they send them, I like to know that it's correct and then I can reconcile. So what I'm interested in seeing is what our actual expenses were. And I understand that maybe a couple million could be added in period 13. I'm not sure that that's really, the board has any oversight or any understanding that that's going to happen during that period. Those are things, you know, that maybe are encumbrances, maybe they're new expenses. I have no idea. I'm just saying, could we please see period 12 and have it attached so that the public can also go back and see that?
I'll be glad to attach it.
Thank you.
There's not, the period 13, just to be clear, are for accounting adjustments that are made through the audit period. The auditors are aware of all those adjustments that are made. The period 13 stays open until the auditor says we're done auditing, no more adjustments are made, it's done. But period 13 shows the most frequent, the most current numbers that are going to be reported in the audited financial statement. So I'll be glad to provide period 12. It will be immaterial at the end of the day, so.
But to that point, though, if we were going to go back and say, look at fiscal year 19, calendar year 1920, we would be looking at period 13.
I pull every report I
Right.
pull through period 13 of any
Right.
given year because
So-
those are the most final
Yeah.
and most accurate numbers.
So
in
just
every
so
case.
we're all clear that then you could be comparing apples to oranges if you're using a full year budget compared to a period 12 that is not final. But I think you said you can provide them.
And yeah,
we
might
can
just be
provide them.
for-
But you need to understand that it could be apples and oranges and there could be something that is missing.
Right,
So-
just for comparison, just to see how much it did change. So how did the year close? How did things look on June the 30th? And then once all of the auditing is done, how does that end up? What is the difference?
And you want to compare that somehow to the budget, though?
Just to see how things ended at the end of the fiscal year, and then how everything has been adjusted, closed out, and final. I think that's
I think we can move on.
valuable.
I think, you know, we're speaking apples and oranges. End of the fiscal year is period 13, but if you want period 12, we can give you period 12
give you
and
periods
understand
one-
that it's not complete or accurate.
I can give you periods 1
completely
through
accurate.
1 through 13 if that makes you happy.
Okay, thank you.
And a matter of fact, you have periods 1 through 13 every month. We've submitted at the completion of the whatever period we were in. That's what has been provided at all the board meetings since I've been here. So
I'll just add in, I do appreciate the conservative budgeting that you've been doing, because when we get knocked with a $1.1 million loss in revenue, it takes a lot of that sting out of it so that we know we can still push through that. We can still do what we need to do as a district. So it does make sense to continue to budget conservatively, and budgets are always moving, always changing. But to have that cushion is a really big deal that makes me feel more secure in where we are financially when we have that $1 million knock that we don't have any control over. So I do just want to point that out.
thank you. I appreciate that. As long as I get to do the budget, that's the way I'll do it. So.
Other questions, comments on the budget? Okay. All those in favor of approving the 23-24 working budget?
Aye.
Oh, we didn't hear a motion? I'm sorry. I thought I had a motion. Can I have a motion to approve the 23-24 working budget?
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
a second by Mr. Brickler. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
The motion passes 4-1. Ms. McCowan, you were an aye? Okay. The motion passes 4-1. Okay. Moving on to discussion items. So we've got Mr. Wells is going to talk to us about the 24-25 school calendar. Holy cow.
Yes, believe it or not, it is about that time. The calendar committee convenes for the first time next month to start crafting recommendations to bring to the board for the 24-25 school year. This year's a little different, that I wanted to really get some feedback and some direction from the board, with the high school, with the date that it's anticipated to be completed. Do you want the committee to look at doing anything creative with the Thanksgiving break? Like, is that, do you want us to bring you a recommendation where we are off that week, or basically stick with our traditional Thanksgiving week. And so that's really my purpose tonight, is just to get some direction from you all to take back to the committee.
Okay, we'll start. Ms. McCowan, any thoughts?
I don't think it would hurt to have several options, something a little bit more creative where you look at maybe taking the week of Thanksgiving and then how would we compensate for that? I think that it would be better to have more options, kind of not knowing where things will end up. So I would like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to be facing a situation that we're going to have to come up with a couple different options. I think, you know, it was always my understanding that we were probably going to be looking at a Christmas time break move into the new school year, whether that be school starting right before Christmas break or right after Christmas break. So I don't really know how that factors in with trying to take off the week of Thanksgiving, and I think it's going to be a very fluid situation, which I know doesn't always work with making a calendar. Having been on that committee, I know that you have certain days we have to do and things like that. So I think we're just going to have to work really creative, and I think everybody's going to have to just realize that it's a fluid situation, and we're probably going to have changes. You know, if we have 85 snow days this winter, then that's really going to push back construction, or it could be a great winter and we could move forward. So, I mean, I'm willing to listen to any options, and like I said, being on that committee, I think we'll just have to get together and be really creative. I know one thing that I have heard a lot of staff, they have really liked the work days, so that's going to kind of, I think, should factor in as well. But again, like, you know, saying that, you know, we have to be in school certain days and certain hours. So yeah, I think we just need to be able to present lots of creative options.
Mr. Brickler?
Yeah, I was going to say, based on what we heard earlier, chances are we're not going to get into the new high school until, I think it was like after December 12th was like the final day. So, and that could probably not move earlier, probably, if anything, might move further out. So having your best estimate of what you can do during that time. But I agree on the work days. I think keeping those in are going to be a big benefit for the staff.
I think options are good. And just to clarify, how many years have we had those work days where the children aren't at school but the staff are?
This current year is the first year that we've done staff work days.
Okay, so we haven't done any half days in the past for staff to have work days, or meeting days for staff to have like report card conferences and different things like that without kids in the building?
We've had professional development days. We have had multiple early release days, but this is the first time we've ever had days set aside where basically, you know, we're not pulling you into meetings. These are days for you to do the work that you would typically do in the evenings or that you would typically do on the weekends. And we've tried to strategically place those out throughout the year, close, you know, leading up to breaks. At least 3 of the 4 are near breaks, because that gives our employees time. You know, it's so hard, you know, leading up to fall break, for example, we have that coming up. It's such a rush time, a hurried time. Everybody's ready to go on break, and then we expect everyone to be ready to go, ready to teach first thing that Monday morning back, and this gives them that day to plan and get prepared to have the best lesson possible that next day.
Okay, so it sounds like the difference is now the days before, when they had no students in the building, were taken up with professional development and meetings, and now those days are not professional development or meeting days at all?
The staff work days are not. We still have professional development days, but these are specific days set aside for our employees to do the work that they need to do.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I would echo everybody's comments. I think it'll just be as many options as we can have, and I think that doesn't even necessarily need to mean that we move in on Monday and Tuesday the kids are in school. Yeah. So I think whatever creative ways that we need to accommodate that, I think hopefully we'll all be open to.
So we have to, by statute anyway, provide the board options. We can't just bring you one calendar. We have to bring you multiple calendars. So I think what I will probably propose to the committee is that we have a little bit of both. And plus there's another month or 2 before we would be presenting that anyway, and we'll see what else happens with the construction. So that helps me to help the committee on what our focus needs to be. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Other discussion items. I have a handout, if you wouldn't mind to pass that down. And if you wouldn't mind to pass that down. I'm sorry, I only made 6 copies. This is for in-district training that we have offered to the board. So I want you all to take a look through this. My suggestion is, and we have talked several times, even prior to our new board being elected, getting some team building done, and that was not ever really met with a lot of support from the previous superintendent and frankly our legal team. What we have are options that KSBA will actually come here and do the training here for us. And they have, if you look at the last page, the very first item on the last page, it's board and superintendent developing the team. It is a 3-hour training session. It's here, and it is sort of your traditional relationship buildings, guidelines for working together, learning how people respond to different conversations, how to best discuss things with people. But I think this would be a really good one for us to do for developing our team, and the fact that we can bring somebody here to do it, the fact that it is, I've got the cost. Any of these trainings, FYI, and this will go into the next discussion item, any of these trainings are at a cost of $200 per hour plus expenses, which would be mileage, and if they were spending the night or something, it would be like that. But this is considerably cheaper than some other external development that we could do. So I'd like for you to consider using this for some development purposes. All that we really need to do is give them some dates, and they will come out here. We'll have to give them a date and a place, obviously. And they'll come out here and they'll do that training for us, and I think that that would be really helpful. I also think that it is helpful, so that would be letter B. Letter C kind of goes along with it, so maybe I'll just lump it all together. I don't see any reason why this couldn't be an ongoing thing for us to do as a group. Clearly not every month, we don't need to do this, but maybe once a quarter, a few times a year. And my thought is that each one of us could pick a topic for the next quarter, and we can figure out who picks what. But I think that it would be really helpful, even though we go to a lot of trainings as a group to KSBA trainings, we're still getting different messages because we're all attending different sessions with different people presenting, and we're not all actually together, even though we say it's the one time we can actually be together. So this way we all hear the same thing. We can all ask the same, or hear the questions, hear the same answer, discuss, and sort of move on with some of our issues. I mentioned at the beginning of the year that I really want us to be able to move forward as a working board that can get things done, can work through issues, and can do things quickly with everybody's input and put kids first. And I feel like this is a good way for us to start some of that. So I'm suggesting developing the team. I'm also going to suggest that we look at, and I realize we don't do Robert's Rules of Order, but parliamentary procedures for school board. This is more, how do you run a meeting and how do you keep a meeting on track? And I think that's really important for us as well. So those are my two recommendations. What I'd like to say is that with everybody's agreement, I can at least reach out if you all want to send me individually, or maybe I'll throw out some dates in late October, maybe early November to have this for developing the team, and then we can decide if we want to move forward with the other items as well.
I think that's a great idea. I know, Ms. McCowan, when you first came on board, you suggested doing this, and I just think it's a wonderful idea. With the previous superintendent, we just always did this. When I came on board, we had the team building.
I was told we were not allowed to. I asked
Yeah, we
about
did.
it too.
We did the team building. Of course, that was COVID, so maybe that affected it. But we had different sessions just really to be able to get together and come together as a team and get to know each other. And I really did appreciate that Mr. Hawkins always did that. And so I think that moving forward, that's a really good thing to continue. And I really appreciate you bringing this to us. Thank you.
Okay, I will throw out some dates, and we'll get that scheduled for late October, early November, before the holidays. You're welcome. Okay. with that, any other comments, questions on those discussion items?
I do have one.
Yep.
Just, is there an issue with an open meetings? kind
No,
of thing?
what we would do, it would be scheduled as a meeting.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if somebody wants to come, they can certainly come and attend. But yeah, it would have to be scheduled as a meeting, and we would have to post it as a meeting. There would not be any formal agenda, there would be no public comment, there would be none of that. It would just be us doing our work. Okay. Okay, anything else on those items? All right, now I've lost my agenda, here we go. Okay, so I'm trying to make this as long a meeting as possible tonight. So I need a motion to go into executive session. And is the correct executive session noted here? Those are just, we don't go through those. They're just information. So we don't usually talk about those. There are information items, fundraisers, and donations that were provided to us as well. So the motion to go into executive session pursuant to KRS 61.8101K for development and discussion of superintendent goals. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Glass,
Second?
a second by Ms. McCowan.
Could we have discussion before we vote?
What?
Could we have discussion before we vote?
Before we vote to go in?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Motion, second discussion.
Yeah.
I would really like to ask that we do this after maybe the next month's board meeting, if Mr. Atkins is in favor of that. I know this is something that probably should have been done really back, at the beginning of the fiscal year, July, in July. So I realize that we're a little bit behind on it, and I definitely want to do it, but I don't think that anybody is really at the top of their game at 9 p.m. I have to be at work in the morning by 7, and I think that if we go in now, I don't know that we're really going to take the time that we need to discuss and go over these things, because I do think it's foundational and important and really only fair to the superintendent that we're able to set clear expectations with clear measurements, and I just don't know that 9 p.m. after a long meeting is a good time to do that. So that's my only suggestion.
I mean, if everybody else wants to do that, I'm fine with that. I would say that it's very difficult for me to get here before our allotted 6 p.m. time. So we would have to be very on our game for an efficient, quick meeting to be able to get into executive session at a reasonable time at that point too. So I think there's difficulty on both ends, but I'll open it up to the rest of the group for whatever you guys want to do as well. It doesn't bother me either way.
I can be flexible. I mean, it's important. I know that we're getting late into the fiscal year, I also understand that it's been a long evening and maybe we're not as fresh as we would have been if we'd done this earlier. So, I mean, I'll go with whatever the majority would like to do.
I don't think, sorry, you want
I mean, yeah, it is 9 o'clock. I am tired. I do hate, because if we are going to have action, then all of our folks have to stay, so that is a good point. Another option, because I'm like you, I can't really get here much earlier than 5:30 or 6. Another option could be if we could find a time in our schedule to have just a 6 o'clock to 7:30 meeting one night, like a special, maybe if that's a possibility, just to come in, add the agenda item, just to go in executive session. I would probably rather do that than have to,
I agree. I think
keep
that's
everybody here late and keep,
I would be okay with that, Mr. Brickler.
Yeah, we can't guarantee a short meeting ever. So
that's
I don't know that is something we can wait on. So I think if it sounds like everybody's in the let's do a special meeting and just focus on this discussion, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, because we
need to do it because we've wanted to do this, and so I really want this to happen. And I'd be willing to push through tonight, but if that's not the consensus, then we can definitely do that and set it for an earlier time.
I'm the
And I
same
do
way.
think that we could be fiscally responsible. It sounds like we're going to have a special meeting about the policy, which will take literally less than 5 minutes for the first reading or the second reading. So maybe we could schedule it then. It's not, I think everybody's prepared, it's just the lateness of the hour. So if that policy meeting for the grading policy change comes up, later this week or early next week, possibly we could just do it at the same time. Have one one meeting.
Well,
just
next
knock
week
it-
is fall break.
Well,
so
whenever-
we can't
whenever
do
that
next
meeting
week.
is,
But,
this week,
But
whatever.
I think if we do that, we'll just need to wait and find out what that timeline is going to be, and then work around that. If that's what everybody wants to do, that's
That makes sense,
perfectly
'cause then
fine.
we can guarantee that's a short meeting.
And I will make
Maybe.
that my first order of business first thing in the morning.
Appreciate
is
that.
I know you all need an answer on that quickly, and I'll make sure I get you one.
Okay. So then I guess we can vote on this. All in favor?
Nay.
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 Nay. So the motion fails, 5-0. Okay, is there a motion to, so then I can just skip over items 8 and 9 in the agenda because those are resulting of item, no, I'm sorry, 13 and 14 are a result of item 12. I did take Latin. So we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Ms. McCown. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you all.